I could have any kit of my choice, it would be Tri-Slusher, Burst Bomb, Kraken. I really think Nintendo should have done that, bro. They missed a golden opportunity for a godlike kit.
I would say E-Litter, Burst Bomb, and Kraken. I think that would be so broken.
I really want Range Blaster with Splat Bomb and Kraken. I would do anything for this kit.
Only wish for in my dreams is a Splatbrella with Burst Bomb and Ink Storm.
This one actually comes from a friend who showed me a kit for Vanilla Slosher that had Torpedo and Trizuka, which just sounds like a lot of fun to me, and any excuse to actually play Slosher more sounds fun to me as well.
If I could have a kit of my choice, I'd go for the Octopus with Splat Bomb and Inkjet.
Friends and rivals.
Undoubtedly, my Fable experience so far has been Crack on Roller Sweep.
Stressful, but fun.
Intense, exciting, and challenging.
Exciting, thrilling, and fun.
We stay winning.
My favorite special so far is the Trizuka. It may be a simple special, but it can be devastating to the other team if you use it correctly.
The Kraken is by far my favorite special. It's so fun to use. I haven't played it competitively that much yet because it's not on the weapons I use, but I hope it comes to Range Blaster or one of my other weapons really soon.
My favorite special definitely has to be the friggin' Kraken, purely out of nostalgia.
If I'm letting my bias talk, I'm saying Zipcaster, ignoring every issue it has with netcode.
It goes without saying that the Kraken is my favorite special. Back in Splatoon 1, you could use it whenever you were feeling a little bit a little bit shaky in a fight, and you could just get away for free.
finally here. After 8 long weeks and 6 intense qualifiers. The FABL Finals. There is so much at stake here, but in case you're just joining us today, let's get you up to speed on FABL, the Free Agent Battle League. Tiger is the king of the castle, as they're the highest from the leaderboard playing today with a score of 323. Yato is also a powerhouse, reaching 17th place on the leaderboard with only 2 qualifiers. This honour is shared with Eon, who got 30th. One spot below Eon is Sofa King. Both are competitive teammates, but today, they're mortal enemies. Then there's Photon Jet, Jason, Kyodai, and Peter, all of them IDTGA All-Stars. After today, 32 will become 8, so buckle in, the Grand Collision of FABL starts now.
Folks, if that intro video didn't get you hyped, nothing will. Welcome into FABL Finals. These teams have been battling it out through 6 qualifying events down to the top 32, and today's action will pull that down a little further into just the final 8 players. My name is NineWholeGrains, bringing you the action today, and I am joined by the one, the only, the person who I can't seem to shake after being away from for 5 years, ShinyHunterZac. Zach, we're here again, more Splatoon.
Yeah, Nine, doesn't matter what time of day it is, whether it's 5 in the morning or 5 at night, it really does not matter. And this tournament and this format, I truly feel like fills the last piece of the puzzle that Splatoon needs. Finding these free agent players in a concept that in the West might feel foreign, but in the East is very, very commonplace to have these talented free agent players that team up for one tournament or maybe a series of events to come together and see who can come out on top.
And the teams that you will see today, as noted, the top 32 players here who have survived this gauntlet of qualifying events, their solo rank plus their competitive experience has been parsed together to create an ELO. That ELO plus their admitted playstyle and the leaderboard after these qualifying events is what has been used to create these 8 teams today. And we have some fun alliteration on these team names. So I do hope that some of you out there enjoy wordplay. And before we dive too much further here, we do, of course, have to note Off the Dial and Mulloway IT for their incredible work to pull this together. I know everyone loves that wonderful word that starts with a P, Zach. Production! And I mean, this is about as clean as it gets.
Yeah, specifically, I want to give credit to their website. Their website is absolutely fantastic, and again, in the same vein of filling a niche that I've wanted in the community for so long, it has a beautifully designed website with standings that go over the names of the player, how many points they've accumulated, and most importantly, the weapons that they play. So whether they are fine on multiple roles and multiple types of weapons, or whether they're purely a one-trick, you'll be able to find it on that website. And as Nine said, if that intro video did not get you pumped with checking out some of the players that are going to be participating today, then I don't know what will.
And just before we dive too much further here into those players and those teams, as we do know what our first matchup is going to be, we'll just briefly discuss the format here. Today's action is going to be very familiar to a lot of you. It's a standard double elimination bracket. Winners round 1, losers round 1 and 2 will be best of 3. Winners round 2 and losers round 3 will be best of 5. Winners finals and losers finals today will be the best of 7. And then we'll tease you a little bit here. The grand finals is going to be a best of 9 in the showdown rule set. That will be tomorrow, and we'll come back to that. If the discussion goes that way, you folks are going to love. It's such a fun way. But we're going to get in now to our standard action. Zach, we have Boisterously Based versus Deep Dive for our first matchup here. Some fun names and some player names that you and I are familiar with, too.
Yeah, Boisterously based, having a player that I've gotten to speak to on multiple occasions and have a lot of respect for in Jext, and the top player on the team being Killer Panda with a rank of 7 on the standings. Actually, Tau Panda and Ghosty 7th and 8th respectively, only separated by a few points. And as you see on the screen now, they're going to be starting things out with Splat Zones on Manta Maria against Deep Dive, a team who currently, in terms of the standings that I was referring to, has players a little bit further down the rung, with their top player being seeded 20th all the way down to 33rd with Splat Droid.
Yeah, it's interesting to note here that even though they're seated a little bit lower from an ELO perspective here, their X rank maxes are actually higher by and large here pieced together, and that's why their full team ELO here very, very close. So they've done a great job picking a great match for us here at the start. There really isn't a ton of difference from an ELO perspective for a lot of these teams here, and that's what you'd expect when you use all of these events to pare down to who is still remaining and left. And one other thing to note, you all have probably noticed here, we will be using a counter pick system here. So should that pop up here after this game, we'll discuss it a little bit more briefly. But Zach, we may as well talk more about the map and mode that we're seeing on our screen. You and I have gotten so used to specific map lists here. This is one we haven't gotten to talk about for quite a while.
Yeah, first of all, counterpicking over the last year has become almost one of the standards for high-level or major Splatoon tournaments, so I love to see that just getting right out the gate here in finals. But for Splat Zone's Manta Maria, you know, we talk about map design and we talk about the shapes of maps, whether they're square-shaped, whether they're more linear, and I would say the latter is true in this case. Splat Zones on this map, I believe, is going to have 2 zones, and you have that circular grate in the middle where that pole is, or the mast is going to be. So you can really use that area if you're a longer range or anchor/backline player to set up and walk between. There's also overlooks on either side that you can use as well. If you're some of the more boots on the ground style weapons and taking a look at some of the weapons that are being typically brought by the players, we may see that, things like the Junior or the NZAP. You certainly have lots of ground to cover, and we've seen an uptick in specials like the Tri-Strike. Despite the discussion about how good that special may be, it's going to be certainly good for those 2-zone maps like Manta Maria.
Absolutely, and again, one of the other fun things about this map, or maybe not so fun depending on how you view it, is a very long map here. And so often when this map gets played, if you don't have somebody left up in the action on one of the various nests or perches that you can go to, you will have a very, very difficult time getting back into the action after the fact. We got a custom fly over there, folks. I know you love the production that's coming through, but we won't have to stall any longer because the games are set to begin. And Zach, I mean, there's one weapon jumping out here. Photon Jet on the Octobrush.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to bring up as well. You know, we've seen a couple of weapons. Just last night, actually, we saw a Slosher Deco come out, which also has that Zipcaster. The Octobrush, I think, having a little bit more of a favorable sub in that Suction Bomb, something that can have a super large blast radius as far as sub-weapons are concerned. For these smaller zones, that's going to be a huge boon.
Taking a look right here, spectating Mir here. You see oftentimes on this map, I feel like, Zach, where teams kind of work together at the start. Someone goes down in an odd firefight getting caught between 2 or 3 different players, maybe not even knowing what took them out. But whenever teams are able to quickly move back, you see exactly what you see here, which is a very nice natural attacking path to go and punish. Now Photon Jet is exactly at the spot that you want your sharking weapon to be. It's going to be very difficult to pick out exactly where Photon Jet is. You know it's coming eventually. Photon Jet does opt to back up there, swung at the sprinkler there and did not get any value for it, but already over 50 points off the board here for Boisterously based.
Yeah, and even though Photon Jet is on that Octobrush, I think Jext was really the tip of the spear. They're supported by the Crab that was on that left-hand side zone. It allowed Jext to get up on top of the Overlooked, where Photon Jet is now trying to catch a couple of members of Deep Dive. They're going to settle for taking over the zone temporarily. You see Splat Droid up top. They're going to pop the Zipcaster. Can they find somebody who's jumping in? They're just barely able to get the swipe onto Ghosty in a trade, but all that while, the zone has been temporarily stopped at 46, and Deep Dive is doing everything they can to give that penalty over to Boisterously based.
Yeah, and Jason did a great job there stalling out that one zone. I know they haven't fully given a penalty here. You can see it's still on 0, but whenever you have your Splatling able to move around, we have seen Kaji absolutely ruin people on this map, simply hopping between the positions that you would love to see that backline heavy Splatling go to. And finally, the patience for Deep Dive will pay off. A nice penalty there, and frankly, they're actually not in a bad spot if they can take maybe Jet out here or Jex. Splat Droid does just that. Photon Jet has gone through, but certainly has been spotted out. If they can wait out these specials, there are more points to be had.
Yeah, Splat Droid unabashed in the face of fear there. You can see they're attacking the crab player. They're able to get them out of the crab and then take them down. They also had the support of that Tacticooler on the zone. And you saw, just as it went away, Splat Droid was able to pick up one of those sodas. Jex, who we were talking about just now, going down yet again in the form of a trade. The sloshing machine, not maybe traditionally a weapon that you see as much in terms of trading. Maybe you would think something like the Octobrush would be more akin to that. And Photon Jet trying to find those picks. We see Splat Droid once again trying on that Zipcaster. Whether they get any picks or not, the stall tactic has worked as they're now firmly in control of the lead and are ticking down through the 20s.
Yeah, very nice here. And with 2 more down, if Splat Droid finds 1 more here sitting in a crab, this could actually be the game if they clean it up here. This is a risky jump that will hopefully end up being covered, and it appears so. Tau Panda getting the most necessary of picks here to keep the game going on for any longer. With just a few more seconds, they're going to throw everything they have to try to get their own zone, but with all of that time moving through, no, not just yet. Finally, okay, they had to get the wipe out there. Deep dive after going down in a dangerous way at the start of the game, Zach, coming back with what was essentially one major prolonged push, and we saw Manta Maria in full effect on that one.
You know, Nine, we talk about a pendulum effect in these tournament games, and I think the longer the maps are going to be, the tougher it is to swing that pendulum back the other way. Once you get behind on a longer map like this, where you don't have somebody that you can super jump to, especially if you don't have a Tacticooler to go to, it really is difficult, and it takes so long to get back into the action, which reduces the overall amount of fights that you have, especially fights as a team if you're not just trying to trickle in or get behind them on a weapon like that Octobrush to really make an impact. So you have to choose where and when you take those fights, especially carefully. Deep Dive, once they got those zones, doing a great job of defending their position, and even facing some of your more traditional specials and just plain weapons like the Vanilla Splash-O-Matic and the Sloshing Machine. They were able to get the job done there on map 1.
And speaking of map 1 here, you can see 16 lovely maps here, 4 from each of our competitive modes. This is the map list that will be used through the duration of this event, and certainly in the showdown format, which we'll again tease you a little bit with. But take a look here, folks. These are the places that we'll be playing on today. You can note in the center of your screen there, the Manta Maria Splat Zones pick. Obviously, that one is already up through there, but they have 3 more modes that they can, 3 more maps they can go to if they would like to switch over to another Splat Zone, or they do have 3 other modes that they can go to and 4 stages apiece on that. So we'll wait for that pick to come in and inform you just as we do. But Zach, I want to go ahead and build a little bit on a concept that you talked about there beyond simply the pendulum swinging back and forth, that is choosing what fights to take on the defensive side. And I'll pick out one particular moment there. The trade that Jex ended up getting. We set the stage for you all before this match began and said, hey, Manta Maria is a really long stage, and if you trade, it's going to be very, very difficult to get a jump back in, and the opposing team is okay taking those trades because they know how long it's going to take you to get back and neutralize a zone. We do have the choice here. It is Tower Control, and stunningly, Zach, it is not Inkblot Art Academy, but perhaps less stunning if it's not Inkblot Art Academy. You knew we were going to Mako Mart eventually.
Yeah, maybe a bit of a break to see it not be Inkblot Art Academy. But, you know, to your point, in Game 1, we talked about what did Boisterously face do well. You know, they had Jex, as I think the phrase I used was tip of the spear. They were able to get through mid quickly. They were able to get on top of that overlook, and they were able to take away, whether they could see their opponents or not, they were shooting over that sort of half wall into the thin alleyway that they were trying to navigate through, while the Crab was supporting them with that superior range in the backline. As when we're going to Mako Mart here, you know, Crab, of course, is one of the better specials to have on the tower because it can be very difficult to displace, especially if they notice anyone trying to flank and going to that ball form. But there's also tons of high ground opportunity there. We didn't really see many anchor weapons. I think we saw one heavy splatling, and that's about it. So for team members like Tau Panda and Ghosty, if they're going to want to counteract that strategy, they're going to need to build up those specials just as quickly and really have a strong entry, because the checkpoints on this map are pretty easy to spot out, and a lot of them are easily hittable and viewable from those sniper overlooks especially. So lots of opportunities in tower control generally, along with splat zones, I think considered the two more metered game modes as compared to Rainmaker and Clan Blitz.
And one of the strategies I love seeing teams use here on Mako Mart is the tower puts you up at exactly the spot that you would want to be at to spawn camp the opponent. We saw in one of our sets last night that we got to talk through with, I believe it was Jackpot, they set right up on the tower just past where that first checkpoint is, and then 3 of them just immediately jumped the opponent who was waiting at that part. We were wondering why in the world were they doing that? This is silly. And then suddenly the wisdom came through, because the joy and beauty of tower control is how you attack ahead of the tower. Because again, as you noted, Zach, everybody knows where those checkpoints are. We've got a couple of different specials that can take out anybody who opts to sit on that tower for too long. So the game in front of the tower is where the real meat of it is done. So keep an eye on how these teams attack, and especially in a free agent tournament, this is a real great opportunity for these players to show their versatility. And take a look here. We love the graphic that is up on the stage, and we won't have to stall any longer, folks. Let's get into game number 2.
Yeah, take a look at the compositions here. It looks like Photon Jet going to be sticking on the Octobrush. We're also still going to have Ghosty on that Splatana Wiper. So 2 weapons that really enjoy flanking as best they can. This seems like a pretty good map for Zipcaster, and we don't see that infrequently. On the opposite side of things for Deep Dive, they're going to be hanging out again with that Tri-Nouveau. That's going to be excellent for setting up the Tacticoolers. Of course, that special being unbreakable, so it only goes away when that timer does. And we see Photon Jet already trying to flank around and make something happen in mid.
Yeah, this is incredible patience there. A lovely, lovely play there that was set up because of the prodding and poking that Tau Panda and Ghosty were doing on that sides with their respective weapons. All of it, the seen threat versus the unseen threat, was to move their brush up there, knowing that even if it was a trade, it was going to be a 1v2 in their favor. A very painful landing for Jext, who does at least get the Booyah Bomb out there. And of course, getting through that checkpoint, a very, very nice opening to this game.
Yeah, but BP implements almost exactly the same strategy. They have Jex moving forward, they have the Crab Tank supporting the push, and it's just unfortunate the way that it turned out. In fact, a nice defense there using the Tri-Strike by Deep Dive, and that's going to allow them to stop the tower pushing at 59. And not just that, getting some control back here in mid, but Photon Jet hanging out next to those boxes. They know that's a popular place to set up, and for weapons like that heavy Splatling, they're having to push back all the way to the other side where those 2 checkpoints are, and it's really not allowing them to do what that weapon does best, as Jext tries to keep that push going.
Yep, Jex fought it out there, and, you know, a pretty valiant effort getting 1 player. That's kind of what we noted there, where how do you play in front of the tower? Credit Deep Dive, they had themselves set up and defended the one spot that you have to defend when you are trying to keep opponents from getting past that second checkpoint, and frankly, they didn't even touch the second checkpoint. So good decisions all around there. Jason, of course, going to be your designated tower rider. And they've actually done a really, really nice job of controlling mid. And now that they've got a couple specials out here as well, they are ever so quickly marching towards that. Zach, I blinked and the lead is swapped.
Ghosty gonna go down at a pivotal moment. They had that Ultra Stamp just winding up, and their teammate will fall next to them. That's actually 3 down as Jext once again will get taken out. You know, you look at a weapon like the Tri-Nouveau, and it can be played in a multitude of ways, just like the other support weapon on this map, which in this case is that Splash-O-Matic for Boisterously based. A lot of players using the Vanilla Splash like to play it just to farm up the crab and use the special that way. Well, Eon can do the opposite of that. They could just farm up the Tacticooler, but instead they're using the walls that are all over this map to try and take out multiple members, and they're doing exactly that.
Again, credit to Boisterously base there. That was looking very dangerous. Completely opposite of what I said before, where Deep Dive set themselves up properly for the defense. It looked like Boisterously base was playing that defense by the seat of their pants and trying to figure out where they needed to go to defend, not necessarily being able to coordinate it, moving where you think you should go in a normal given circumstance. But all the while, they did manage to hold on to their checkpoint and not a lot of damage done to it either. So they're going to get set up here. I'd wager that Tau Panda is probably waiting for the right moment to use the crab. Doesn't want to use it without being able to have a target to fire at. But all the while here, as they've been holding it around here, Deep Dive is A-okay with that. They do have the lead, and finally Tau Panda decides to use it or lose it. And it might be lose it here. Tau Panda has to run all the way around here. All the counter specials going through. Ghosty on that Splatana went out there, so they tried to do the old seen threat, unseen threat once again. Deep Dive has adapted, and they have held firm here.
you could tell Jason is basically looking over their shoulder at every moment, but thankfully for them, they've got not just the run speed, but also lots of a runway to maneuver around on. They finally got out that wave breaker there. Eon going to be able to pick up their own tacticaler here, as well as multiple teammates, I believe. Going to look to try and get some picks, but look at just how much map control they have here in mid in the final minute. This is a great sign if you're trying to lock Boisterously based out, which is exactly the strategy you want to employ. It's really, really risky to just sit on your laurels. It's much better to do what they're doing, which of course is try and get the knockout, but also move that tower to the opposite side of the map so that if you do end up in an overtime situation, they have to push it not just back to mid, but also past the point that you got to, which results in multiple opportunities to take the tower back.
Well, and also the rich get richer too. If you continually hop on the tower and move it through a little bit more, you can eventually start passively building a little bit more special meter as well. So you're controlling mid, you're doing this, you're doing that, the opponent's not winning, and you keep getting more resources for it. So with 20 seconds left here, Boisterously Base is going to try to open some things up here. Ghosty did see a target, opts to back up. Maybe it was because of a call out or just didn't see where the drop came from, but that's going to be an ultra stamp that ultimately comes up short. Now again, they have an idea of who to throw at. Maybe on that left side, lost it. That is a GG Booyah Bomb that is waiting to be tossed. And so, wow, everything, fireworks all around it. And yeah, ain't no amount of ink resistance gonna get you through it. Deep dive, a fantastic defense there. Really for the last 2 minutes, Zach, they never let that game get anywhere close to being out of hand.
I loved at the end there. It looked like two of the squids were like, I think they were technically on the tower, but they were like floating almost as the tower was moving up that ramp. But they were looking like they were actually off the tower, but they were just getting bumped up frame by frame at a time. But major congrats to Deep Dive. They do a fantastic job there. You could see their coordination at the end. They knew exactly that along with the triple ink strike that they couldn't just rely on the special alone. They had to push in and make sure that multiple of them were in a position to just have one of them touch the tower, because as long as somebody is on the top of that tower for the winning team there and one of the opponents is not, then that ends any hope of an overtime in its tracks. So very, very well done. I think that ended up very close to what we saw in game one. So the consistency factor is there, which is a great sign if you're Deep Dive. Of course, Boisterously Based still in it. They're going to move down to the loser side of the bracket here in losers round one. And it looks like based on the bracket, they will be taking on Gamy Goat, but fantastic start here for Deep Dive, and they're only hoping that they can take it further from here.
Yeah, and a little bookkeeping here as well. Alluring Airfare did get the victory over Gaming Goat there, as Zach noted here. Of course, you all just got to watch Deep Dive take a 2-0 victory over Boisterously Base. Homeless Humour got the 2-0 victory over Foolish Fusion. And Efficient Effectiveness, which is exactly what we all strive for, won over Coral Counterargument. So that was one that I was really hoping to get to say on Castak because it feels so very Splatoon-esque. But speaking of saying, we've been saying a lot of words, and there is a wonderful component to this production that you all will enjoy. We are going to bring in here from Squid School Stratagem to discuss that last set. So Gem, if you're ready, we'll pass it over to you.
Absolutely. I've been taking some notes. I've been watching from the shadows as that match plays out. The theme that I would say I saw between Boisterously Based and Deep Dive here was aggression versus control. Boisterously Based had a Wiper and an Octobrush, two weapons that really want to get in there and cause some mischief and rush forward at the enemy team, zip cast in at the enemy team, and that definitely caught Deep Dive off guard early on in game one. They had a really solid hold for the first little bit of that game and made it look like it was going to go in Boisterously Based's favor. They had Tau Panda doing a great job of holding down the zones and making sure that those didn't swing the other direction while the frontliners were going up and doing their job. But what started to happen over time, once Deep Dive got a little bit of traction, got their feet on the ground a little bit, is those frontliners who were rushing in and causing mischief started running into Jason on the heavy. There were some moments there where you could even just see on the cast where a player's starting to try and dive in and realizes, oh wait, there's a heavy looking at me. Uh-oh. And those kinds of moments where they ran into a brick wall, of the brick wall of the comp that Deep Dive was running, occasionally, they start to falter here and there and go down. And what Deep Dive did a really good job of doing when they got those situations was painting. Once Deep Dive got a few picks, the entire map turned their color in both games. And that control was really what enabled them to snowball the pushes that they got as well as they did. It's really, really hard to push in as a more passive comp, but once you do manage to actually get the control that you need, it's also really hard to push in against you. And setting up the way that they did made it such that the boisterously based comp, which did have, a Zipcaster and an Ultra Stamp, a couple of specials which they can get a lot of value, and they can also just kind of not do too much or even get the user splatted. It put a lot of pressure on that machine, on that splash, to get a ton of value out of their Crab and Booyah Bomb. And pushing in against something like a heavy on the Greats of Manta Maria, definitely no easy task. So Deep Dive was able to pull it out there, and very much the same kind of thing happening on TC Mako Mart. Both teams kind of not really contesting first checkpoint all that much, and neither team even really getting to second checkpoint. So it was definitely a fairly close one there. Boisterously based, able to get a pretty solid lead down to that 46, I think it was, after getting 2 down with a crab on tower. But once Deep Dive was able to clear that, again, the map just completely turned their color. Very, very good map control, and it made it so difficult for the brush on Boisterously based, for the wiper on Boisterously based to actually push their way in and get anything done. So, great job to Deep Dive. Looking forward to seeing what more they are able to pull off there. It does look like we are just about ready to head back and see, I believe we're going to be seeing Homeless Humour versus Efficient Effectiveness. Loving the alliteration here in these names. Back to y'all, Nine and ShinyHunterZac.
Thank you kindly for that one, Gem. And Gem hits on so many great points. If you aren't already following Squidstool, what the heck are you doing? Come on, it's great content. It's good fun for everybody, and an absolute metric ton of work, or maybe Imperial ton. I don't know which system Gem uses, but it's a ton of work either way that's been done, Zach.
Yeah, and I love a lot of the points that get brought up here, and especially because these are free agent weapons, players with weapons that we may not see consistently, especially the Octobrush standing out in that first game. We see the next matchup taking place on screen here with Homeless Humour and Efficient Effectiveness. Taking a look at the weapons that they play, we do have what looks like a pretty dedicated backline player in Callium, with those chargers, as well as the custom jet that's become very popular in this meta, and the Forge, which really has not been that popular, but on paper seems to have a pretty strong kit. And on the opposite side of things, you have Panda, who looks like more of a player a la .Q, where they have that E-leader in their wheelhouse, but as a result of what, again, has become popular this meta, we still have the Vanilla Splash. We even have some weapons that love, as Jem mentioned, to get up close and try and do some distracting with that Splatana Wiper. So really interested to see which of these, because there is no lack of choice here, especially for Efficient Effectiveness, to see what they actually bring into the lobby here as we get into this game.
Yep, and also interesting to note here, folks, you have your number 2 and 4 players on the leaderboard here in this matchup. Tiger sitting at number 2 on that leaderboard, a nice max of 2,437.3 for the X rank. And on the other side, it is going to end up being Chucks, who is sitting at number 4 on that leaderboard as well. So again, if you wanted to see some of the strong players in this event come here into the finals, you're not going to find too many better than those 2 players. I'm sure we'll be calling out their names a lot, but Zach, you brought up an interesting point here, and I'll go ahead and tie this in to what Jem said as well as we wait for these teams to get set. When you have weapons that you are strong with that kind of function in a way that Not that they need support from other weapons, maybe more so, but they have a way that they need to be played around, ways to build around them. That's the struggle that these teams have to come up with answers for, sometimes on the fly, and of course your opponent gets a say in the argument as well. So with all of these many, many wonderful stickers that we've got and these fun comps that'll come together, I can't wait to see how they're able to piece together the unique properties of some of these weapons and specials as the opponent tries to say, no, you can't do that. And well, Zach, there's really not even a joke to be made here. Tower Control Inkblot Art Academy, of course. We knew it was going to happen eventually. It didn't happen last set. We were spared for 2 whole games.
It comes full circle. It truly can. We can't have a major tournament without playing Tower Control Inkblot Art Academy. And really, I want to make sure I touch on your point here. Some teams do really center themselves around a certain individual's play or weapon or play style. And Orion and Isabel are 2 players like that really come to mind, either on that Tetra Dualies or on something like this Platana Wiper, where they really have to have the maneuverability and the room to be able to get in there and do their thing. And as we look at Tower Control Inkblot Art Academy, Manta Maria was that very linear style of map. We now go to a very square looking map where the 2 sides, those 2 little pits on the left and right, aren't used as much, especially on tower control. We do see some fights take place there, usually if one member or multiple are retreating, but really the focus is going to be on the center, especially because that first checkpoint is right up against that wall that you can see on the very left of the image there. So really going to be tight corners and tight corridors, which those shorter range weapons love, and tons of specials like the Booyah Bomb and Triple Ink Strike going to be helpful in this situation. Just looking at the weapon compositions there and what they might bring, Homeless Humour looking a little more aligned to the meta themselves with things like the Sloshing Machine and also that Vanilla Splash. Efficient Effectiveness, would love to see, of course, the Tri-Slosher always sticks out in my mind, so I would love to see if that comes in. We've seen just what that Inkjet can do recently, and I would love to see if anything like that shows up today.
Well, we won't have to wait too much longer. The teams are ready, and we're going to be getting set here for our second set. Again, folks, as you noted, it is a best of 5, and the winner will move on to winners finals. Taking a look right here, much the same, surprisingly. And hold on a moment, 2 Tentatek splatter shots. My goodness, is it Splatoon 1 all over again, Zach?
This is the hidden meta that we didn't know we needed. We do indeed see Callium as well on that E-liter, which this map, you could basically reach across to the entire other plat with that weapon. We do see some early trades coming out. The Sloshing Machine and the Wiper going to go down here as we see one of those 2 Tentatex fall at the same time. Panda going to be holding it down at the top there. Indeed, they are going to be, instead of on a counter anchor weapon, and that's exactly what happens if you're not able to match the range. Callium able to get this snipe that takes down their fellow backliner, and it's going to allow them to get to checkpoint 1 for Homeless Humour.
And I tell you, not a lot of oof, that, ouch.
Ooh.
I forgot what I was going to say. That happened way quick. Never mind. I forgot entirely what I was going to say. Efficient Effectiveness, living up to their name, moved up almost immediately and threw 2 specials at the problem to do so. Tiger can actually cure a couple of them, but is not able to, and Peter moves forward, really saving not only the checkpoint, but maybe a whole lot more. You can see the last 2 members of Efficient Effectiveness are actually coming from their opponent's plat, so they were well ahead of it here, and Peter did the exact right thing, taking a dive onto the tower and taking that player out. The threat is not yet gone, but for the time being, it might have been minimized.
Yeah, both Tentatex had fallen there, and I'm really interested, in the meta, Vanilla Splash, it was not uncommon, and still is not uncommon to see 2 of them getting played, one of them to farm up that crab, and one of them to be the more offensive edge. I wonder if Homeless Humour is doing the same thing, where one is meant to farm Triple Ink Strike for every checkpoint that they can muster, and speaking of checkpoints here, Efficient Effectiveness having no trouble, even with a Zipcaster in tow. They will fall, however. They've also lost their machine player, Panda, trying to hold it down, holding up to that backbone title, and they are going to be able to hold off Peter, who was able to get those early picks, and now Nine, as a result, they're already to the final checkpoint.
Yeah, this is looking dangerous. Chucks did not escape there, it appears, finally, because of the sheer distance that they have to cover. They might get it, but Callium falls there, and hold on, that's their backliner. So now this push is not going to have anything to poke at it from some distance. They'll fight it up off in the Bats area, and they just barely get to a Booyah Bomb is Space Seals, and Panda will go down. Where is Callium supposed to position here? Taking a look at where to fire, trying to find somebody, and finally, I feel like we can take maybe a little bit of a moment's reprieve as 3 people did go down there. It was just the brush left, so the jump is going to go behind the tower here. They're going to have to paint up mid, but my, oh my, Efficient Effectiveness did not need a big window to make their presence felt.
Yeah, and I'm really seeing shades of the first match here. You know, the E-Leader is basically doing the same thing there that the Heavy Splatling was, as we see QLR able to get the pick with the Zipcaster help. And in terms of the point I made earlier, Peter has really established himself, I think, as that more offensive player, where Chucks is maybe just trying to farm up those strikes, and they're going to need one here as yet again, they're about to reach the checkpoint. Panda trying to distance himself with that burst bomb. They're not going to be able to get anyone there, but they will be able to get out for the time being, and now they're going to get the pick onto Chucks. Their teammate able to help with the tower as it's a 3-down situation. Just Callium left. Can Space Seals help solve it? No, they're able to get one pick. QLR goes down, and just at the brink of disaster, they're able to finally force a wipeout, but with a minute and a half left, that is going to do it. The wipeout, the last thing that they needed. They even had the follow-up jumps, and as we've already mentioned, Efficient Effectiveness living up to their name and handily taking game 1 here on Inkblot.
And completely outpaced in almost every respect there. Yes, they had maybe some interesting options there with the ink brush and things you're not familiar with, as we actually saw there some matching taunts. You gotta love it, especially from a free agent team like this. But this again shows, we talked about the coordination, having to build on your weapon strengths and what the opponent is doing. In the heat of the moment, they did such a fantastic job rotating who was attacking in this spot, who was attacking in that spot. And I think once the game started to get away from them, Homeless Humour was really jumping down and getting fight happy. And that can be so risky, especially when you're against a team that already has lead and has solid paint control on your plat, because people are going to be moving around, they're going to be sharking, and they are going to be able to recover their ink and health much faster than you are if you're not careful. So an emphatic knockout victory on Inkblot Art Academy tower control from Efficient Effectiveness. Will now move into Homeless Humour's counter pick. Again, if you're just joining us, this is the menu that they will get to choose their next dish from. A lot of choices here to be had. And Zach, speaking of map lists here, I like 16 for a map list. I think it's you know, going with 3 on each, maybe a little bit too few, I would say. It's certainly if you're going to be using a long league format, as FABL has, but when you have all of these maps, you can do a lot of exciting picks, or, as these teams have chosen, you can just go back to Splat Zone's Hagglefish.
It's one of the more favored map and mode combinations for a reason. It is really that neutral, almost the final destination of Splatoon 3. And 9, we're sports guys. To your point, 16, very common number in things like the playoffs, which are happening now in both the NBA and NHL. It just feels like a correct number for these types of situations. It's easily divisible. And speaking of easy, Hagglefish is just an easy map to understand in terms of the basics. Now, I know there's a huge skill ceiling for each map, especially when you factor in the mode, but you have a couple of alleyways, you have an uninkable tent that is very popular for both crab tanks and longer range weapons alike. And in match 1, we saw things like a Heavy Splatling. That's a great weapon for this map because you can set up the wave breaker in a very comfortable spot, a little nook where it can still be effective but not be broken as easily. And if they want to bring in the E-Leader once again, maybe this is how they do it. They set up on that uninkable tent, or they set up just behind where the zone is. It is a 1-zone map and a decently large zone at that. So maybe that's their counterplay. And for Efficient Effectiveness, their plays from their number 32 and number 11 ranked player respectively, with QLR and Panda, I think impressed me the most. Both 2100 X-rated players, but I think they did a fantastic job at their roles respectively. With Panda taking up, that role of having to flex onto the V-Splash, but doing such a great job of knowing their range and their distancing, and QLR holding down, I think, the objective a lot, and that's something that is not always seen from weapons that typically like to flank or be aggressive, but they did it perfectly there, and they're going to need to keep that up if they want to hold it down here on Hagglefish.
And we'll take a look here. The teams are getting ready and set and should be shortly. I'm very curious here, Zach, to see what the members of Homeless Humour opt to go with. And we won't have to wait a whole lot longer. They had a lot more weapons listed than just a couple Tenatech splatter shots. So we'll see if they have to bring it out here. Of course, we are going to see much the same. And no, there it is. Double T-Tech. The only thing that's changed is just add a little splash-o-matic to it, Zach. The wonderful spice that every Splatoon 3 composition uses to achieve maximum taste.
And for Homeless Humor, they're actually bringing Kular over to the Dark Tetra Dualies. You love the ability to be able to just roll around a maximum of 4 times, which is great, especially if you're not able to hold down map control all the time. You're able to boost through those areas that seem a little bit more dangerous. Use 2 to get in, 2 to get out, and it seems like it's helped them, especially with that crab that Panda consistently brings for them, and they've taken over the zone first.
Yep, taking it over so quickly, and this is the real threat. Now you get to set up your Tetra loops, and really it's just a matter of when Kular opts to do it here. When are they going to go forward? How's about now is the right time? Not able to close the deal out, but if there's any follow-up, that should be okay. But hey, credit Homeless Humor here. They've actually done a really nice job of taking that player out there and not diving too deep there. Well, as I say that, Peter may have done exactly that. Got a little bit overzealous and painted the zone with their ink after going down here. Chucks has done a pretty solid job of trying to give the rest of the team a foothold, but they need more than a foothold, Zach. They need some paint on this zone.
Yeah, Chucks, of course, we mentioned their role likely being to get that paint on the zone. We see the W or weave slider coming out there from QR, and they're able, as a result of that, to get in and get the pick there onto Chucks, looking to find another one, and they will. That helps to force not just a 3-down situation, but a wipeout with almost 20 points left. I'm not sure EE can get back in time.
Oh, this is going to be dangerous here. Now, again, the Tetra Loops come through. Peter wins a pretty big fight there, but when you win a fight and a crab is what is there to join it, it's a rough landing, and oh my, Zach, we didn't really even get the chance to break down a lot on that game. Once again, Homeless Humor is going to drop that. There were moments where Chucks was holding on, Callium was holding on, Peter went in to make some fights, but it is efficient effectiveness once again. The slight change, Zach, you called it at the very beginning. What were those Tetras going to be able to bring? Well, the answer was a whole lot.
Yeah, definitely a very crazy sequence of events there, and we saw just what that Dark Tetris can do. They don't even really need as much control as something like a traditional flex weapon does, where, you know, you have your Stamper that can get in with the Zipcaster, but they really need to set up with something like the Burst combo, the Wiper. They have the Ultra Stamp, which has received multiple buffs and has the ability to get in just because of the speed once it gets wound up, but still, even weapons like that love to have the, you know, just the throw mechanic of that special instead, especially with what it can do against Crab Tank now. And so with EE going up 2-0 there, I believe we had some mix-ups with the colors, so my apologies for that. But with EE going up 2-0 and putting up just as emphatic a performance as they did in Game 1, now Homeless Humor's back is truly up against the wall there. You know, that's where sticking your dedicated anchor player not being able to flex over and needing to rely on, in this case, the double Penitex and the Splash really becomes tricky, because you're not able to set up the specials that you want. You're not able to get in position. And as we move to Rainmaker on Scorch Gorge, yet another relatively popular map and mode composition, at least tournament-wise, they're going to need those setup specials to allow that Rainmaker carrier to have the maneuverability to push forward, because they can't just boost forward and roll like a Dark Tetris can.
Yeah, and if there's anything that you can hang your hat on here, any moment of reprieve or something that you could try to build off of, and one of the reasons I suspect this was the counter pick is, at the very least, you know that in these last 2 maps, you have played into moments where the opponent had the map on their side. You tried to run forward and make a play and got punished for it. They were moving around a very nice amoeba-like versatile defense, controlling the game from that respect. You couldn't find a moment to push through and take anybody out. Here in Rainmaker, everyone's looking forward, and they're not going to be able to simply wait on you to make a move. Once you are pushing forward with the Rainmaker, you're throwing everything you have at them. So maybe they wanted to move away from the more measured respects of tower control and splat zones, but Zach, this is a big map, so I guess you could say that's true about Rainmaker, but if there was ever a map that you would want to go to, this is going to give efficient effectiveness lots of room to move around, set up their defense, make the callouts they need, and when you're against a team who's been playing faster than you as it is, this is a really rough look for Homeless Humor.
Yeah, just to quickly roll off what you've been saying here, Rainmaker, of course, going to be that more fast-paced mode, and we've seen it quick a lot of times recently on Clam Blitz on this same map, where you really need to control the ramp that these spawners are coming in from, because they can either come down from that ramp into that larger open area, or they can go to the very thin overhang that's right where that basket would be, or in this case, right sort of near where that first checkpoint is. The right-hand side checkpoint, very popular for a reason, because it provides a straight shot to the eventual goal. And taking a look at the changes here, we keep the double 10 attack setup. We go to that Tri-Slosher Devoe, so they're going to have that Tacticaler, and Callium going to be moving over to what I think is a great pick for Rainmaker in that custom Jet Squelcher.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember talking to Starburst's Ice, and Ice saying, listen, if you were ever going to use it, this would be the time. But when a couple of you make it 3 and the 4th Chucks is going to run away for dear life, you don't really get the opportunity to do that. I am stunned at how efficient, for lack of a better term, efficient effectiveness is at combining their hitboxes. They are reaching 100 HP's worth of damage so quickly and efficiently here. You'd never know that this was a team of free agents.
Yeah, truly living up to their name. They even have the Crab in the back line to try and still hold things down. A trade I think that Space Seals will take to help force a delayed 3-down situation and get the Rainmaker back to mid. But getting to that checkpoint was one of the major objectives here for both teams. EE getting to it first. They're going to lose one member there to Chuck, who's able to take them out. And Callium needs to set up in a good position. They have that Inkstorm at the ready. I think they were pushed very far in sort of the lower areas, and they did it again. I'm wondering why they're positioning there when there's a good bit of high ground that they can take, grading and overlooks that they're not really taking a lot of effect of. Thankfully, it doesn't get punished too badly, and actually they're finding a couple of picks at this rate that may allow Homo's Humour to finally push the Rainmaker a little bit further.
Yeah, but look at this, Zach. They took a lot of time, and 2 of those members were able to respawn. Now, they were able to get another player up, so Patience may have won out in this respect. Callium needs to find a way to get through, and time may have run out here. The Tetris dives forward. Will they be able to clear anybody? They do get the Tri-Slosher, and they may have stalled long enough for the rest of the members of Efficient Effectiveness to move through. Zach, I use this expression a lot, and it's almost never good. I think there was some meat left on the bone on that one.
Yeah, Kuehler, I think if they had even gotten a little bit further to take out the Rainmaker carrier, that could have been even more devastating, but it works out well in their favor as they're able to use all of their rolls to get the trade there on the Tri-Slosher and allow their team the space to clean that up. Space, such an important concept here in getting those pushes going, and now for EE trying to find something, it's Space Seals yet again, their tip of the spear in shutting down the Rainmaker carrier, but they have their Stamper trying to get something going. They've already taken out 2 here. Kuehler trying to force them back on that overlook that we were talking about. They're already extending their lead, and the Rainmaker smartly staying back to allow those jump-ins. They effortlessly move through the Inkstorm as well, just short of where the Toxic Mist was set up, and now it's a 3v2 situation in favor of Homo's Humour, but the jump-ins are still coming through, and they have a Panda on that Crab to boot.
Yep, no, the threat is not yet gone, and I don't know if it was Chucks or Peter, but I believe one of those T-Techs went behind. Whoever it was did get taken out. They did their darndest to try and slow that down, but all it really did was use a couple of specials and keep it there. They are going to try to throw everything they have at that spot, and members of Efficient Effectiveness are almost goading them to try to come out here. Hey, go up, overextend a little bit. There's nobody sitting under here. Let's go ahead and fight. Tiger's going to wait as long as possible and is not going to get the reset. And they may have gone a little bit too hard at that, Zach. I thought they were going to send one player in, maybe their slashing machine, to grab that, get a couple more points. I think they sent a couple too many in to try to make that play happen, and they may have handed Homeless Humour a decent look at that first checkpoint.
Yeah, deceptively long amount of time on the clock here as we get to 1.5 minutes left. They use the Inkstorm and the triple Ink Strike to get back mid, and now they're trying to use a third here, that other triple Ink Strike, to get something going here, but it's going to be Kuehler yet again, just as Panda goes down to the Rainmaker shot that stops the Rainmaker yet again, just short of that ramp. It looks like that ramp is just something that they're not able to breach here. Tiger on the unfortunate end of a 1v2 is Space Seals yet again able to clutch things out as that Slayer/support hybrid, doing such a fantastic job at that for Homeless Humour and keeping them in the game, and now they have the boost of that Tacticooler at the ready, those sodas helping them the final minute here, but once again the Rainmaker getting reset back to mid, and efficient effectiveness already retaking mid here as Homeless Humour bunched up and forced to retreat with their tail between their legs.
And it's stunning. Again, I noted this earlier here. Efficient effectiveness, ability to combine different sloshes, a couple burst bombs here from there, 2 different burst bomb weapons to reach these damagings. You see what the setup here is for Homeless Humour. They're going to go ahead and put down a special or 2, particularly the Tactical. They're going to go in and take a fight and try to outscale in that fashion, but they aren't able to do so because of the way that they've been positioning. Now, finally, this might be the 3rd or 4th time, Zach. I haven't been able to keep count. They might have gotten through here. Peter needs to win this fight, does get the trade, and with the Tacticooler will be back first, but at this point, you know they're going to have to get through that checkpoint, break it again, and then get a few more points. No margin for error here. Qlar, are you going to do it? No! Callium pushes him away one more time, and we may have a game.
Callium having steel hands here, holding it down, but you mentioned it, Nine. This is going to be the hardest part. They are able to get the checkpoint, but they're going to have to break through it once again, and the respawns are not too far away. They're doing their best to pop it quickly. They're able to get the picks on both the Vanilla Splash and the Sloshing Machine. They also have the Toxic Mist cutting any path over to the Rainmaker from getting closer to them. Callium trying to choose the right time to push forward, but watch out for the flank of Qlar. They're able to shut it down. Chucks having the triple egg strike as well, but no, they get stuck behind the pillow. They're not able to get out behind it, and the Sloshing Machine with just enough range to reach and get the final shots off on that Rainmaker shuts down what could have been a Cinderella comeback, and efficient effectiveness sweeping through Homeless Humour in 3.
Oh my goodness, it is not often you see at the end of the game a map be entirely the color of the team that just lost, and make no mistakes, folks, a razor's edge separating victory from defeat in that one. Credit to Homeless Humour for even bringing it that close, but efficient effectiveness dominating the early portion of that game and doing just enough on the defensive side. So, wow, my oh my, living up to the name is EE. Again, if you're just joining us, this is a double elimination bracket, so those of you who are fans of the Double D tech of Homeless Humour, don't go anywhere. They will be down in the losers bracket, but Zach, I think we got to pass it over here to Jem to bring us a little bit more perspective on that set. The 3-0 from Efficient Effectiveness over Homeless Humour. Jem, what did you see?
Y'all picked the name Efficient Effectiveness on purpose, right? Like that was something that we set up because of this team. Like, the offense from them was phenomenal. Really, really, really good coordination. That's something that I work with a lot of teams on trying to set up, on trying to get their callouts to effectively get 2 frontliners attacking the same person from different directions. But this is a pickup team, and they managed to pull it off anyway. Really, really impressive on TC Inkblot. Now, TC Inkblot, of course, is a map mode that you have to play pretty aggressively anyway, and so that's kind of just necessitated by the way they played it. But something that we even learned on the Squid School channel at one point from a VOD review of Starburst, they're doing really well here. On Inkblot, when you lose control of the tower on the enemy plat, you want to try and hold from the left stack if you can. You want to try and get jumps back in. You want to keep that push moving. You want to keep that momentum. And keeping that momentum going is something that Efficient Effectiveness did really well. I knew from the first push that they tried to go in with, they got stopped, but the Zipcaster was there at exactly the same time as the machine, and even though Homeless Humour beat them back, I was like, man, this team is going to be tough to beat. After Homeless Humour got a couple of early picks and were able to maybe start getting the ball rolling, EE clamped down on that right away, and the entire rest of the game was all theirs. They were getting up on the enemy bats, getting multiple players, and every single fight it looked like EE was putting 2 players on the one that they were fighting, which is perfect. That's exactly what you want to see. And with weapons with the mobility that they had on their comp, they were able to throw a whole bunch of different combinations of people forward, and they would still be able to have that same synergy. So really, really great aggression there. And it made it really difficult for Homeless Humour, because at a certain point, you kind of just got to dive the tower in desperation. But diving the tower in desperation is often a solo play, and that's something that EE was able to stop just about every time. So great work to them. Zone's Hagglefish, I'm going to be honest, I didn't get to see a lot of it because it was over so quickly. I was looking at the comps, I was thinking about them, and I was like, wait, why are there only 11 ticks left on the clock? That was how fast that worked. Getting a Tetris up that deep into the enemy spawn and being able to keep them there will just do that to you. Rainmaker Scorch was definitely a much closer outcome. I think huge credit has to be given to Seal, huge credit has to be given for Callium at the very end, getting that Rainmaker double that enabled them to get the momentum to start pushing forward. And if there was one moment in that match where Homeless Humour made efficient effectiveness look a little bit more mortal, it was definitely at the end there where they were starting to get staggers on them. The Tetradualies are going to go in and cause a lot of mischief, cause a lot of mayhem. They're going to distract a lot, but that also means they're going to go down a lot. And if you play carefully enough and look for it when it's coming, you can often get a coordinated fight on that Tetradualies, get them down, and now their team is down players. And they were able to start leveraging that towards the end, towards getting that Rainmaker forward. And maybe just a little bit rushed on the Rainmaker push at the very end, but that is looking like a kind of blueprint where need to do it. They're going to need to get, some solid solo play to open things up, just win a fight cleanly, but then start to apply the pressure forward with enough room to back up so that you can eat that pressure of the Tetris coming in and just splat them over and over and over again every single time they dive, because they're kind of diving into unsafe positions. And that might be the way to do it here. But EE did not falter in the end there. They had a really solid defensive perimeter once they finally got back on their feet after that stagger. And they're looking like one of the teams to beat from what we've seen so far. But there's still plenty of Splatoon left to be played there. So I'm really interested in seeing it. Comment on Homeless Humour's comp there, running the double T-Tech. Something that I feel like I kind of noticed there that might help them going forward was that it felt like there were times where the strikes would come out or the tacticooler would come out, and maybe there wasn't quite as much of a forward push to go with them. It felt like they were really riding hard on the solo plays that individuals were able to make, where, one of the first defenses, for example, in Rainmaker Scorch was Seal getting a 3-for-1 trade to stop the push. And that sort of thing is possible if a team's trying to play as fast as EE are, but what I want to see everyone in on top of it there, because I think they've got a lot of combo potential with the specials that they brought. They've got a whole bunch of pushing power from the Tacticooler, they've got the rain from the jets, they've got the strikes coming out. If I think they start pushing in with those specials a little bit more, I think that they'll be able to leverage that really strong kind of individual talent that they've got and be able to get just a little bit more done there. But great match between those two teams. Love to see how both of them fare going on further in the bracket. But at the moment, it looks like we are going to send you guys off to Winners Finals between Alluring Airfare and Efficient Effectiveness. Should be a good one, and so I'm going to send it back to our casters to hear what they have to say about it.
Well, I hope you all at home are taking notes because, Jem does such a fantastic job laying out the fundamental concepts of the game in such an understandable and digestible way, and that is a skill set in and of itself. And Zach, we have the matchup of the powerful vowels, say that a few times fast here, AA versus EE, Alluring Airfare versus Efficient Effectiveness, and we finally get to see the player that when I was taking my notes here, I was most intrigued by, and that is Yaru from Alluring Airfare. The highest elo here in the event, the highest max EC rank at a whopping 2861. A whole host of powerful weapons as well. Zach, this should be a great matchup here between a team that we just saw look dominant at times versus the team that has, at least on paper, the best player in this event.
Yeah, Yaru looking incredibly impressive and very versatile with what they can play. They can play the shorter range shooters, they can play the machine, which is very important in this meta. They have the E-leader in their back pocket, and with an ELO of 2,700 and surprisingly only 17th on the leaderboard, They get paired up with Plague, third on the leaderboard, and with the second highest elo on the team at 2200, with seemingly being a one-trick of the Crack-On Splat Roller. So that is going to be super interesting as well. This was the player who in the intro video stated that they were able to qualify on just 2 qualifiers out of, I believe, the 6 in total, which is absolutely phenomenal play that is required in order to get them to that point. So as a result, they get to play with Alluring Airfare, and on the winner side of the bracket, at least, no team has really struggled that has won their match. All sweeps, whether it be 2-0 in the quarterfinal or 3-0 in the semifinal. We did end up seeing a game go to game 3 out of 3 in losers round 1, that being Coral Counterargument defeating Foolish Fusion 2-1. But going back to this matchup, and on the opposite side of things, I love that we're getting to follow Efficient Effectiveness right after a very, as you mentioned, dominant performance there against Homo's Humour. I mentioned Kueller and Panda as being 2 players to watch out for. Kueller able to master the Octobrush as well as the Dark Tetris. Panda doing such a great job of holding it down with the Splash-O-Matic and providing the crab support, as well as the spacing that they're able to provide with their weapon. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Centratide and Bunny are able to bring as part of that final equation here for Alluring Airfare. Are they going to, for instance, is Centratide going to be the designated machine player? Do they have something more backline oriented in mind? And for Bunny, maybe your Slayer player there or flanker, as we see both Splatonis and the Tenatech that we saw multiple of in our last match.
Zach, would you call a Coral Counterargument a Reef rebuttal, perhaps?
Oh my god.
Listen, I wasn't going to get to make the joke if they didn't get further on in the bracket. I was holding on to that one for ages, and I will see. I may have had the opportunity to use it later, but in any case, Zach, you make great points here about the roster from Alluring Airfare, and as I look at their potential weapon choices here, you kind of piece together the opportunity for them to go with no anchor. You can see and piece together, look, they've got a Tentatech on one side and a couple of the swords. They could maybe go over with either a Dualies or perhaps the Sloshing Machine. We have a pretty good idea of what Plague is going to be playing, at least if the list is to be believed. And Yadu can play back lines, front lines, everywhere in between. And oftentimes when you have teams like this, where you have, maybe one player who is the dominant player, you want to try to play off of their strengths and what they're able to do. And I think oftentimes you put that player in a position where they can contribute the most. And this is partially my speculation, but I would much, much rather have a player of Yadu's caliber play on the front lines there. Go with them. You can put either Bunny or Centratide on a weapon that can go up with them and play off of that spears you've put. And we can see here Rainmaker on Sturgeon Shipyard. This is not one we get very often at any level of play. So I'll be very intrigued to see what these teams are able to bring to it. We've seen, again, a couple of Rainmaker games already, both on Scorch Gorge. So these teams certainly know how to win on this mode.
Yeah, Rainmaker, certainly a divisive mode in terms of some teams loving it and it really lending itself to their playstyles, and some teams trying to ban it if they get the opportunity or save it for last if not. So I'm interested to see how much Rainmaker we get throughout the rest of this series here. As for Sturgeon Shipyard, you have yet another wide open map but with a lot of verticality to it, almost as much as something like a Flounder Heights, but definitely not as short feeling or as thin as Flounder Heights would be. So for Rainmaker, you have multiple pretty solid options to get that first checkpoint. I think the most popular is typically to the right because it's a little bit easier to access, and then it gives you sort of a pretty relatively straightforward path up the ramp to your final destination. You have to watch out though, because just like for tower control on this map, you tend to get stuck around the lower plat area where there's, again, a lot of verticality all around you. You're sort of in this valley. So if there is a anchor or backline ranged weapon, or even a crab, because there's tons of opportunities to set up grading and rotating platforms that the crabs can land on, that is going to be difficult to counteract, and you really have to set up for that. I'm interested, we saw in the weapon screen, Efficient Effectiveness had multiple players that could be running the Dark Tetras, and then for Alluring Airfare, multiple players that could run more meta style weapons like the Vanilla Splash. So As you mentioned, with the exception of the Crack-On Dualies main, or the Crack-On Splat Roller rather, I am super interested to see what they actually bring to Rainmaker, because it can be such a crazy mode in and of itself.
We'll take a look here, folks. Just a couple more seconds to get it started, and there it is. My goodness, a lot to break down on that side, but it looks like much the same that we saw in the last set from Efficient Effectiveness here. Centeride bringing out the ZNF Splat Charger. That's such an interesting choice here for Rainmaker of all modes.
Well, and this has to be one of the first times in a tournament that I've casted where I've actually seen it come into play. And the kit is very interesting. It's sort of akin to the Fire Fin from Splatoon 2, where you have that splash wall and there are multiple places and sort of thinner hallways that you can set that sub-weapon up. But it does take away a lot of your ink, and chargers don't necessarily have a lot of shots to begin with. Taking a look at O here, who's going to be taking it to the left-hand side as they have the breathing room, but it shows just what that charger can do when set up in a high ground position as Centratide shuts that push down early.
Yeah, fantastic shot from Centratide, because it is going to be very difficult for Efficient Effectiveness to dig this one out. Panda's actually in a pretty good spot, but again, everyone knows you're there, and Yadu's going to provide a little bit of support as well. What is Panda going to do? Not a lot, as it turns out. Tiger tries to come in from the back, and Yadu holds serve. So very, very nice defense. That beginning got away from them there. A couple players went down, and Plague on the roller was a little too far away to make anything happen there. So given how dangerous that could have gotten, to hold on to your checkpoint, not too bad.
Yeah, aside from just talking about Yado as a player, the 52 gal was one of the earliest weapons that was pointed out in PAX West as being a potential threat in Splatoon 3. It has the only global special in the game in that Killer Whale. It can do serious damage to the Rainmaker shield or to a single target if you want to go that route. We see Centratide picking up the Rainmaker. They're going to take that same left-hand path, and they don't look like they're going to be contested. So it looks like Alluring Airfare going to be the first to break through that checkpoint. Not uncommon at all to see your backline player holding onto the Rainmaker and even using the splash wall to make sure that they can get out and that any lasting effects of the Rainmaker shield popping don't affect them.
Yep, and I love this there. They got the points and they got out there. That was all they needed to do. Hold on to this side. You know that enemies are going to be coming from this left side, so get set up there. And this is the second time that a player has jumped in and maybe needlessly given themselves up here. Tiger's going to get punished for it as well. Zach, that is a wipeout that really didn't need to happen, and they'll probably cough up a couple more points for it.
Yeah, Bunny facilitating that. A fantastic job there by the player who's actually seated lowest on the leaderboard there at 36, but it allows them to get that push going here. And we see Yado at the front lines along with Bunny trying to take down Dotto on that Stamper. It's going to be Tiger, actually, though, who gets the pick first. It's going to be the mad dash, though, for the Rainmaker carriers. Keeler's not able to secure the pick until much later. They actually jump down to the lower region, and Panda now going to be left to clean up the Rainmaker Plague, but perhaps sharking around, trying to get a flank, and they will succeed in the form of a trade. That was a beautiful flick, but they're not going to come away from it clean.
No, and now Yadu's actually got another chance here, diving after one player. They need to figure out where this brush is going. They finally are able to take a player out, so they should have a pretty good look here at mid. Yadu, incredible fall off there. RNG, not a problem for this player. And that's another really good spot, because everyone's going to fall right back down into it. Yadu was moving here, so kind of a one squid show, as it were, and now leading the charge on that left side. If they can escape here from these two other players that are coming from the back side, there might be more points. It appears they aren't, though, so they're going to try to set this down over here on the left side. This is an interesting decision here, because if they get this break quickly, there is an avenue for them to get to that checkpoint quickly, and it looks like O is going to try to go for right that.
Yeah, one of the quickest ways you can break that Rainmaker shield, it looks like, is just having that Ultra Stamp constantly slamming on it, and they get the Rainmaker just at the bottom. It's a 2v1 situation. Bunny's going to need to clutch out here. They get the trade, but it may not be good enough, as one of the last players left alive is Yadu, but they're not going to be able to get away. Again, Clean Keeler has the Zipcaster. They're going to pop it forward. They're going to try and go back on the ZNF Charger. They're not going to quite find enough shots there, and time runs out as Keeler, however, I think with the drop roller maybe, was able to get the pick onto Bunny. Will fall as a result, though, but with less than a minute left to play, it will be Alluring Airfare trying to take the Rainmaker out of their own platform area.
Yeah, and this whole piece, again, was started because of where they set that Rainmaker down last time. One of their players opted to move it back, and we told you that that was going to be a really scary position, and now grabbing the Rainmaker in this position may have been a second misplay with this objective. Tiger is back now. Yaru fighting against a crab and a sloshing machine. That's not a fight you're going to win very often, and it's not one here. And now Plague is the one that's jumping into a scary spot. Bunny desperately needs to close out on this and is not able to cleanly. It may just be Centratide's charger that is dissuading them at this point. A couple more seconds bought by this triple ink strike, and CentratideZac basically saved that game single-handedly.
Yeah, Cure, I can't believe Mad dashed it through that last shot there from the triple ink strike. They're not able to get any picks off of the Ultra Stamp either. It's going to be a full wipeout forced by Alluring Airfare against Efficient Effectiveness to end that game. And it seems like, Nine, they had a couple of true opportunities to back up, reset, and make sure they got a clean look at overtime. But unfortunately, maybe feeling the effects and the pressure from the clock winding down, it results in Alluring Airfare holding on to their lead and taking game one.
And I'll tell you, Centratide there with the super lucky ducky superlative there. I think that might be exactly what you're saying. I agree with you, Zach. Just the time running down and the panic in these heated moments there. There, I think, was an opportunity to back up, let the other members go past that triple ink strike, and then close it. They did not need to get very far past that checkpoint that they had already broken in order to steal that lead. Centratide was really only going to have 1 or 2 shots to close it out. So despite Alluring Airfare handing Efficient Effectiveness a couple great opportunities to take that lead, they hold firm. Now they can take a breath. It wasn't pretty, but the job was completed. Game 1 is done. And as a reminder for those of you who are just joining us, we are in winners finals, which means, Zach, this is a best of 7.
Yeah, and as we get further along, you're narrowing that skill gap. And I like to mention, you bring up how many potential games we're going to be playing here in this set. And I really love looking at that in smaller sets, best of 3s, mistakes are amplified and they really can feel like just one mistake is what costs your team to play. In best of 7s especially, and even further than that, you can make mistakes and lose games and still have opportunities, but you need to adapt and learn from them quickly. Sometimes a loss can be just as strong of a learning opportunity in order for you to come back and maybe even win the next 4. So if Efficient Effectiveness, who has now the opportunity to counterpick, can choose the right map and mode for what has been so far an effective, no pun intended, their composition for them, that they don't really feel, too forced to stray away from, I think they could really turn this on its head and tie up the set.
Well, we will wait here for the counter pick. Again, 16 lovely map mode combinations that can be chosen here. And because this is a best of 7, as we have noted, we'll actually get to see a few of these. So we will update you as quickly as we can. But Zach, I was very, very impressed by how Alluring Airfare was able to punish the mistakes that Efficient Effectiveness were making. Because we noted in the early part of that game, there were a few maybe ill-advised super jump ins that, especially on a mode like Rainmaker, gave Alluring Airfare a lot of opportunities to make big pushes and establish control. So I think that shows a lot of confidence. I've always said that you have to disrespect your opponent a little bit to punish their mistakes, because if you give them too much respect, well, you'll just assume that they won't make mistakes, and that's not how it typically goes. But you can see why this team has marched through this bracket with such confidence. And I don't think it actually mattered. I believe it was randomly decided, but it is always nice to see the team that starts the alphabet be the one that has this type of effect.
Yeah, jumping to your teammates in and of itself, I feel like kind of goes under the radar as this undervalued skill almost. And as we take a look at our next map and mode combination of Clam Blitz Museum de Alfonsino, I know we've noted on this specific one before that you are probably going to need to jump to your teammates, either if somebody is layering their special in to make sure that whoever's holding the power clam can throw it and break that barrier, or if you're coming back from spawn, if you're one of the first ones to get picked and you want to try and get back to your teammates, find some clams, and keep that push going. So sometimes it comes down to, some players will lock in stealth jump on their gear and then just think, I'm safe, they're not going to be able to see me, but there is a range at which they can see you jump in. And of course, if your teammate is just kind of hovering there, or if they see someone sharking on the opposing team and they get taken down and you're jumping into that teammate, well, you're essentially dead in the water there. So you have to be very, very careful. We saw Qlar, of course, who was running with the Zipcaster there, knowing that drop roll are likely a better alternative because you're going to be coming down from that pretty predictable landing spot quite often. But for the teammates that are either not running anything jump related on their boots, or if they're running stealth jump, that is something that they're going to have to keep in mind, especially as their teammates are hopefully calling out when their specials are getting used and when it's safe to jump in.
Claim Blitz Museum d'Alfonsino is where we will be heading next, a map and mode that I'm sure many of you are very familiar with, if not comfortable with at this point. And we have seen some absolute bangers on this, and in just about 10 seconds, we hope to see another one here. And we'll, of course, walk you through how this map and mode ends up going here. But Zach, if there's one theme to it, it's you get mid, you use an entry special, you sneak players in, and you see what comes out in the wash.
Yeah, and we'll see how daring some of these teams are, especially with those Zipcaster specials in tow. They're able to get up on top near where the special is, or where the spawn rather is, and help to take out some of those enemy team members that are spawning in that can give you an advantage when they're trying to keep that push going. Taking a look at the weapon composition, Centratide going to be sticking on that Z and F Firefin, or that Splat Charger there. We also have the return of the Crack-On Roller, and on the opposite side of things, we are going to have the Dark Tetra Dualies, as well as some more meta staples in terms of the Sloshing Machine and that Vanilla Splash.
Yadu already going down here. Both of the machines actually going down. Plague seizes the moment and charges in to try to clean somebody out. Is not able to and wisely backs away. You only get so many opportunities when a crab is what is chasing you down. And now where you're going to see don't see this very often. It's actually the Octoling variant of the Kraken Royale, and a very hungry Kraken Royale this is, taking 2 players out. It looks like one member is going to get punished who was chasing after Plague. So bit of a mess here at the start, Zach, and it appears that Alluring Airfare has come out on the better half.
Yeah, you could tell Plague has likely been playing nothing but that weapon since its inception and honing the skills on that Kraken Royale. There is a practice called Kraken Taming that especially shooter class weapons can use to try and keep the Kraken at bay. Nice positioning there to get some of those splats. They are also holding on to the power clam, so for now, their position is marked, but with how much map control they have, at least for the moment, Alluring Airfare feeling pretty happy. Tiger trying to push out to get some picks, but they are shut down in a 1v2. Panda, again, marked out because of that power clam, and now because of it, Bunny, if they can throw it, will get the first pop of the barricade.
Yep, they're going to try to jump in. There is Plague to try to maybe throw a little pandemonium on it, and Yadu going down there was trying to get up on top of the grading to score a few more points. Maybe a little bit overzealous here, especially because Centratide goes down. They've also spotted out where Plague is at. Plague is going to have to get way out of there yesterday and does exactly that, so they may have once again handed Efficient Effectiveness a golden opportunity to do so. All 4 members already in relevant spots. Panda does go down. Hular moves in now and is going to assist with another player being taken down. They've done just about everything, Zach, here, but they don't have any points to show for it just yet.
This is an area that a lot of teams in tournaments seem to struggle with, is do you be as aggressive as just going in with almost no teammate support just because you have a power clam, or do you wait until exactly the right moment when you have the map control and the specials and the manpower to try and push forward here? Neither team really able to get a foothold in that respect in the first half of the game. You, of course, have Alluring Airfare getting 1 with their power clam in, but it isn't going to be enough. It's so rare to see that 1 is enough to push forward. They're even saving that power clam way back in their spawn, and Bunny's gonna get taken down as a result here. There is some discourse around whether you even pick up what's colloquially known as the pity clam at all in certain situations. Maybe that's one where they wanted to hold off and wait a little bit longer.
Yeah, at some point you really do have to cut your losses, recognize what holding on to a power clam does from a weakness standpoint, but you know, for all of these slight misplays, they have yet to really be punished here. They've done a fantastic job picking out where Efficient Effectiveness is trying to attack. Tiger moves forward to try to close the deal on Bunny, and despite what the Animal Kingdom would tell you, that's not how it works here in Splatoon 3. Hular and Yadu again fighting it out here. It's been a series of firefights in the middle, and finally, after already over 3 minutes of this game have passed, Alluring Airfare has a solid hold on mid. They're going to send Plague in, and actually Plague opts to go back out to try to close out this player, but that player jumps out, and once again, that's an entry special that won't find any value.
Yeah, that's multiple specials. You have the triple ink strike and you have the Kraken come out. Again, they're going to force through with that power clam, but there's going to be almost no follow-up. A little bit there from Bunny, who was in the right place at the right time, but now you've gone 3 down, and look at how quickly Efficient Effectiveness are reclaiming control of mid here. That's also going to give them their specials in a way that's not going to allow Alluring Effectiveness much of a way at defense. Here comes the Booyah Bomb getting thrown out. They also have the Ring Slider if they can take it out. 2 members, however, will fall. I think that Centratide helping to shut down what could have been a very strong push, but Panda in the backline, not just getting the break there. Can they find the pick? They'll get one on the Plague, and I think they'll throw in 1 clam to boot before they fall.
Oh my goodness, that was so close to being dangerous. They did have the pity clam back. If the members of Alluring Airfare did not immediately turn back around to close that one out, they were going to cough up their lead. I was going to comment on how they only got to 61, which means 2 power clams would have been enough. But now look at this. If Plague wins this fight, is not able to, there were more points to be had. Instead, both of their power clam carriers are going to be taken down. And Zach, some quick math here for you. They need the power clam and just a couple more other clams here. This game is so dangerously close to, again, going the other way.
And Tiger getting a great early pick and a second one there. That's Yadu and their backliner down. So Kular with that Reef Slider able to maybe get in. They're the one holding onto the power claim though, and they're going to opt to take the fights themselves. They get 1 pick there on the Plague, but Bunny, who had their special up, will not yet fall, and it's going to be Olaf to try and pick up the pace. Here's one of those jump-ins that we were talking about from Tiger, who somehow stays alive. I thought surely they were going to get taken down, and they finally do, but we are in overtime here in Panda. Nowhere close to the basket. They'll end up trading, but that's too little too late, and as we mentioned, nowhere close to getting that power clam in. It's going to be a shutdown defense from what could have been a very dangerous game, and Alluring Airfare as a result of that defense will take game 2 here on Museum.
I mean, Zach, in both of these games, Alluring Airfare has to be sweating themselves through the last 10 seconds of each of these, so close to coughing that game up in the way that it had gone. And I do want to call out one very important moment. Plague took a dive onto 2 members of Efficient Effectiveness on the push that they were trying to make. It is not a play that I will ever recommend you try to do, but with the tip of each side of that crack-on roller, cleared out those 2 players, a 1 for 2. Centratide was able to hit a shot, and at that point, with 3 players down and nothing to show for it, that one was as good as gone. You did see Panda perform some heroics there to get some points onto the board, but my oh my, Zach, they have so frivolously given opportunities for Efficient Effectiveness to take these games, and then almost coyly hold on to it and say, no, we actually want to keep this victory after all.
Yeah, each player, I think, really playing their part here. Of course, we hyped up Yadu and needed to because of just the ability that they've been able to go through ranked play and get such a high score. Plague showing what they could do, especially with that Kraken Royale, getting those 2 picks early on, being a distraction down to the pit on the far right-hand side later in the game that allowed that triple ink strike from their teammate to take greater effect, that being Bunny, who's been really that sort of support-style player, just farming up those tri-strikes and doing what they can with them, jumping in and winning, or at least trading in some of those fights to hold it down. And then Centratide, that backline presence, sometimes just the presence of a weapon that can reach you in mid is enough to dissuade you from taking more aggressive opportunities that you might otherwise have a greater avenue to doing. So for Efficient Effectiveness, who counterpicks into Inkblot Art Academy now, we're going to see them go to yet another sort of boxy style map, this time with tower control though. So yet again, they're going to have to be cautious of that ZNF splatter scope, because that's one of those weapons that really enjoys sitting on the tower for free and doesn't need a special to do it. On top of that, they have plenty of walls on those checkpoints that they can bounce a splash wall off of and end up perfectly on the tower. So really interested to see how EE approaches taking game 3 here and trying to avoid going down 3-0.
And to be frank, I'm a little surprised that this wasn't their first counter pick. They looked absolutely effortlessly, to throw another E word at the start of this whole alliteration game we're playing, an effortless Efficient Effectiveness on Tower Control Inkblot Art Academy. In that set against Homeless Humour, they really looked like they had all the answers at all times. And again, I guess sometimes you have to save what you think your best counter pick might be for later on, but they now have gone to it. So, Tower Control Inc. Blood Out Academy, we aren't going to be able to tell you folks anything you don't already know about this map and mode, but Zach brings up a fantastic point that I think we'll have to keep an eye on as this game prolongs. How is Centratide on that ZNF charger, or any charger, going to be able to affect this? Because we've always talked about what's the big thing for the backliners as they try to become better players, more rounded players. It's how you move up with your team as they move on, to the point where we have seen in many respects a backline player not be the one that rides tower, instead position a little bit more actively. I'd love to see what they have planned for this.
Yeah, I think in the first time we saw this map and mode, I think the wiper play kind of stole the show and was one of the major focal points and a big distractor as well in terms of getting over to the tower, seeing if they could take anyone out that was either on the other side of it or maybe coming out from spawn. Now you have a charger to worry about. So let's see if that actually holds true. We don't actually know that Centratide is going to be picking it yet. So let's confirm that real quick. And yes, there is that ZNF splatter scope on the opposite side of things. We have just one Tenatech as well as QR returning to that Octobrush. We see the drop roller. We see the last-ditch effort. We see that actually from two members of their team. They know this one is likely going to go the distance.
Taking a look here, where is the attack coming from at the start? They already move forward here. Plague absolutely feeling the heat of the moment there. Goes forward and takes out one member. That's another member, a good hit put on. So that's going to be another, and I don't know if it was Centratide or Plague that cleared it out here, but Plague has had a role in every single member thus far of efficient effectiveness who has gone down. Going to now go from Tiger, who is actually able to win the fight. I was worried that was a slight overextension. They may yet hold on to this checkpoint, as that's going to be 3 down. Centratide is going to try to run away desperately, and it appears for the time being might have done just that, but so quickly. Already it's been people moving up onto the plat. One shot from Centratide will at least take some of the pressure off for the time being. They're going to close out another one, and it does appear that for the time being the worst has been avoided. Will they hit the shot? They've prolonged the checkpoint for the time being, not by taking anybody out, but by just pointing the laser at it, and hey, a successful defense thus far.
Yeah, honestly, Tiger, I think a name that we should be saying more often here, is they've done a good bit there. They've unfortunately fallen while they're throwing that Booyah Bomb out to the Tri-Strike, but they end up brute forcing their way into a triple kill that maybe wouldn't have happened had they not been able to hit those almost 90-degree shots to the left of them. We now see Yadu able to take out Tiger here, looking for another one onto Keeler. They're able to get the first shot. Can they find the second? And a smartly placed Splat Bomb hitting off of the splash wall, able to take them out. That's a little known, or a little poorly kept, I should say, secret to taking out someone that's sitting just in front of that splash wall. We see Plague also making effect of that Kraken Royale, trying desperately to get to the tower before it runs out, to no avail. They'll also miss that shot onto Panda, but they'll get the wipeout as a result, and fantastic job there by efficient effectiveness. They lose the lead, but they stop them from getting to that second checkpoint, and they're able to claim control of mid.
Well, they made use of the wonderful tried and true defensive tactic. Let's just have 4 people attack the tower. If your bats has been compromised and people are up there on your plat, if you send everybody at the tower and the opponent doesn't react quick enough, you are going to be able to not only clear the tower, but you're going to be able to take everybody else out as they try to come back. So nice job there, and a very quick decision to take back what was not only the tower, but mid right after it. And again, Alluring Airfare doing just enough to stall this out, in a theme that has been prevalent over the course of this entire set. Tiger now has moved through, fighting it out with Bunny, and does get the victory this time. Now Centratide in a bad spot is going to jump all the way out, but it appears as all of this was going on, it was Yadu. Of course it was Yadu who had moved behind all of them and cleared the tower almost single-handedly. So we see the everybody go at the tower strategy employed by one team, and we'll send Yadu at the tower as the strategy for the other team.
Yeah, and speaking of strategy, let's talk about Plague for a moment, who gets that pick there onto QLR. First of all, sitting just under those walls, it's almost the perfect range for their main weapon. They're able to get those horizontal flicks and have that maximum damage in almost the ideal spot there. And second, for their gear, they're actually running Haunt. So if they go down, they're able to spot out the player that splatted them, and which is great visibility for their team. It gives them an edge and gives them a way to see where at least one member of that team is going to be without needing something like the Wave Breaker. They're looking for a pick. They're gonna get it and avoid the splat bomb, but go down shortly after. It's 3 down for each side, so ironically it's Tiger versus Bunny, and just as in the Animal Kingdom, Tiger will come out on top, and as a result, EE will push the tower here with 1:15 left.
Oh, and Yaru's splash wall actually got eaten that time by the tower, so Tiger happy to pick up that one as well, and then get Centratide as well. Hold on a minute here, Zach. Moving quickly towards the lead, and will take it. Just a minute left in this game, and Buddy will once again go to Tiger. Zach, you said we need to be talking about this player more, and I think Tiger heard you. That is a wipeout, marching emphatically towards the next checkpoint. Yaru's going to take a dive and is able to do just enough to take out Panda there, as Qlar is now trying desperately to run away and will actually get Plague as well while running away, and now is coming back for more and is not able to force the trade onto Yaru. Just a little bit too much apparently at that point, but with just 30 seconds left and not a lot of control of mid, this is looking like efficient effectiveness game after so many opportunities.
Yeah, Yaru being bloodthirsty there after that wipeout. Really fantastic job actually by Alluring Airfare to sort of get back into the game after that wipeout. They had already forced a couple of picks and were relatively close to where they had been wiped out. So now that allows them to get back control of mid, and indeed Centratide, who pushed the tower, gonna go down. Panda helping to try and force things back, but just how quickly Yaru is able to build up those killer whales allows them to get a pick and allow multiple teammates to jump back to them in overtime. Now the tri-strike gonna come out. Will there be any follow-up from EE to get on the tower? Tiger's there, but there was already someone there, but they actually don't get enough bodies there. It's a 1v2 that ends up coming out on top here, and as a result, EE able to take their first game of the set on the back of a stellar performance from their team. But we have to again mention Tiger constantly at the forefront with that sloshing machine of making plays that set them up for victory.
And Zach, I gotta tell you, they bet everything on that tower dive there. As soon as those went out, you saw that Yaru waited as long as possible before jumping off of that tower, and that everybody else rotated back. That was everything that efficient effectiveness had at that point. If Yaru had survived that fight and kept that tower moving, I'm not sure there was anybody else who was going to be able to get to it before that final point was lost. And woof, I mean, Zach, again, the theme of this set, Alluring Airfare hands some opportunities to efficient effectiveness, and efficient effectiveness doesn't quite take advantage. That game, efficient effectiveness gave Alluring Airfare a chance at a big comeback, and were not able to take advantage. So great job by efficient effectiveness holding that one on as we move into game number 4. Zach, we finally get to commentate something that isn't a sweep.
Yeah, Nine, I think you deserve credit as well, because you mentioned how smart and also why they didn't go to sooner the map mode of tower controlling Blood Art Academy, because of how dominant they looked on it in their previous set. And as a result, they're able to, despite some early hiccups, get going on this map and mode in earnest and take game 3. And now they move back to that neutral ground type of situation that we spoke of earlier. It is, of course, the first time in this set we're seeing splat zones be played. It also guarantees, as a result of that victory, that we will at least see a game 5. And here on Hagglefish, I'm wondering where all of these players are going to be setting up, and for Qlar, what they will bring. Will they go back to that Dark Tetris? I think that might be a smart play because of how well they were able to roll around in and around that zone to get picks, either in the alleyways or on the zone itself. And then are we going to see anything with the Zipcaster try and do any flanking or try to get into the backline to take out Centratide? So many questions that have yet to be answered. We do know, of course, Sloshing Machine, Crab, always good on this map. Lots of open area to set up, whether you're trying to use the superior range of that Crab, whether you're trying to use a Booyah Bomb to have the other team lose control of the zone. And Tri-Strike has once again been very popular. We're constantly seeing that 10 attack, mostly from Bunny. So will Bunny stick on that weapon? They seem to be getting outranged and outplayed a little bit by Tiger in the couple of moments that we saw them fight. So will they change up their strategy at all? Will they go with something different, or will they continue to just be that supportive player that always has that special at the ready and tries to stay alive for as long as possible to make sure that they can have an effect on the zone with their special?
We won't have to wait too much longer. The teams are readied up, and we'll be getting into the game shortly. Again, if you are just joining us, this is only the winners finals. The winner of this will move on to our grand final set tomorrow with a wonderful format that I'm sure we will talk about later on. But we still have business to take care of in this set. Taking a look at the compositions, it's going to be much the same, exactly the same. And on the other side, it's going to be the brush still, Zach. You called it out. You questioned it. Are going to be sticking with this one for quite a while.
Yep, so we have T-Tech v T-Tech here. Of course, different roles or different gear that they're going to be running. We actually see one going with the drop roller as a result. They're trying to get in and use that to make sure that when they jump in, they're not going to get splatted immediately, hopefully. And that, unfortunately, Octobrush, who gets taken down, they're not going to make use of the Zipcaster early. And as a result, Alluring Airfare going to be the first one to take over control of the zone. But there is the Tri-Strike and the Crab that we were talking about. Panda forcing the members of AA to run away, as Dotto is going to be able to take out what I think was either a beacon or some sort of sub-weapon, staying behind this pillow. I love their positioning here, smartly getting back and allowing the safety of their teammate who's jumping in, almost playing like a bodyguard here, as Alluring Airfare is not too far detached from the zone at this point, despite losing 2 members. And as we go 3 down here, EE really looks like they found themselves, Nine.
They have. It's just Yaru who's been fighting it out, and that may be enough. Yaru took 2 people out, but the third one was a little bit too much to ask. A nice shot there from Centratide to take out Tiger, who had really been a thorn in their side, and oftentimes you know that the sloshing machine is the one who's going to be attacking this canopied area there. Now we have some specials to be used at the zone. How long is Centratide going to wait before they toss it? Not going to use it to cap, maybe to try to move some players forward, as Yaru once again is able to find and take out Tiger. So the momentum of this match starting to shift the other way here. That's a checkpoint, or I guess rather their own penalty points going through, and finally Plague is able to crash in. Yaru gets another one before being punished by Tiger. But now, suddenly, with 3 down and just Tiger up, if Plague is able to get into a position to Shark Zac, this could be a lot more than just the lead.
Yeah, we harken back to a point that we touched on earlier in the day, which is that pendulum effect. Those longer maps, the longer the map, essentially, the longer it takes for that pendulum to swing back the other way. But once it does, the enemy team is on the front foot here. And there's Plague with 2 and an assist. Make it 2.5 there as they take the lead. Not any specials at the ready either for EE. So this is going to be so tough for them to even force entry. It's going to be Kular as the tip of the spear. Tiger trying to help and get their way through. They have a splat bomb assisting them. Yadu going to be focusing them down, but they're going to fall as well, and Plague will also go down. Will there be enough bait? They get the wipeout, but they have just a second or two too late that they didn't focus on the objective, and Alluring Airfare there maybe dodging a bullet in that fight, as by the skin of their teeth, they're able to avoid the zone being taken back over, and they go up 3-1.
And they didn't even dodge the bullet. Bunny went down to that splat bomb that was absolutely not needed at that point. I'm not sure. Maybe Bunny already thought the game was done, or just didn't have the ink to move. Hard to say exactly, but I thought that Bunny was going to be enough paint with the splat in that spot to neutralize the zone and give them an opportunity. But hey, just enough time, frames away from still playing that game. Alluring Airfare gets it done, and we noted, Zach, as soon as that fight went so rapidly in favor of Alluring Airfare and Plague got to move up into that sharking position, we called it right out. We said, hey, on this map, if you get sharked in the right spot and the opponent tries to set up on the canopy, as so many teams do, you have no defense from a sharking roller that is coming on up. We saw exactly that, and I'm not sure if it was Bunny or Centratide, but one of them used their triple ink strike to move Plague into position. A wonderfully coordinated play there. Plague closed it out. That got them all the way down to 1/1/2, maybe 0.01. And I guess the game decided that it was enough. But whatever wonderful mechanics are working behind the scene, Alluring Airfare now finds themselves 1 game away from winning this best of 7 and making it to the grand finals here of FABL Finals. So some shenanigans, we'll say, but a well-played game throughout, and now efficient effectiveness has to find some answers in a hurry.
Well, it feels like as a class of weapon, Roller is certainly in the middle or on the lower end of weapons that you typically play in a tournament scenario. So it really is difficult for those classes of weapons to get used to where they're positioned, get used to how they play, get used to, based on their kit, where they might be able to set up. And that's the case here with Plague, who, again, as we mentioned before, has likely been playing this weapon and exclusively this weapon since its inception. So very, very difficult, especially when you have painting specials behind that offensive force, and when they get behind you, as you're trying to focus and almost blindside yourself toward the objective, putting those blinders on and not really focusing on what's around you or especially behind you, and Plague able to have massive success as a result of that. But now, this, regardless of the result, will be Efficient Effectiveness's last counter pick opportunity in this set. So very interested to see what they go for. Coming off of Splat Zone Tacklefish, they had a couple of opportunities in the early game, of course, looked quite strong, and we'll never know. The questions will always be there for how would the match have ended up if they had had just that little bit of paint at the very end of the game to give what would have been a massive penalty over to Alluring Airfare and try and lock things down. As far as the mode, we'll have to see what they go for as well. The only other mode that this map is on is Tower Control, but super interested to see if we go back to Tower Control because of how well they were able to play it on Inkblot Art Academy.
Well, as you noted, if there was ever a time to do it, Tower Control would be a nice place to make it work. They are strong, and we have gotten word it is Tower Control, of course, on Sturgeon Shipyard, my own personal purgatory. Come back to haunt me once again. But man, they were so close to taking their first game on Sturgeon Shipyard, so they certainly know how to play it, them being Efficient Effectiveness. And listen, if it was a map you feel you should have won on a mode you did win, we don't have to do too much math to figure out why this was the pick.
Yeah, and it's coming later in the set. So again, we talk about those mistakes that you make. You talk about learning the enemy team's composition, of which we're not seeing many changes throughout these sets, or these individual games rather. So putting into effect what you were able to accomplish on Tower Control Inkblot with the lessons that you learned for the Sturgeon game on Rainmaker should, in theory, allow you to have at least the mental edge in being able to come back from a defeat there, probably a tough defeat as well, being so close to retaking that zone on Hagglefish, especially with your back up against the wall. Of course, having that loser's bracket as a slight cushion, but that's little consolation for a team that's trying to make it into grand finals via the winner's side. And for Sturgeon Shipyard itself, of course, those checkpoints in that sort of open court area over by that ramp, they're going to be rather open. So you're once again going to have to watch out for the charger play. You're going to have to watch out for even the sloshing machine or the tri-strikes that come in, and you're going to have to be ready because a lot of these games have gone to that final second overtime situation. You're going to have to be ready to put multiple players in a position to scramble to that tower and make sure you're on it, with ideally a third person saving their special for the last 20 to 30 seconds unless absolutely needed to ensure that the winning team is not able to get back on that tower and stop an overtime from even happening.
And I think the interesting piece on this map is going to be the fights that happen in Pit. This is not a unique thing to Splatoon 3. Of course, we saw it all the way in 2, but if there's one area where Efficient Effectiveness, I think, has generally outpaced Alluring Airfare, it has been when the team fight scenarios occur, when there are these scramble situations around objective. The problem for them is that Alluring Airfare hasn't really given them that many opportunities to do that. They've generally been better at stabilizing and fighting in mid, and the ball really hasn't gotten rolling on them in many respects. So we'll see if that continues to be the case. Yeah, it's the same comp coming right out here. And on the other side, the Octobrush is going to be once again the pick here from Qlar. So Zach, at this point, the teams have pretty well locked in what it is they're going to play. They just believe it's up to them to execute.
Yeah, I've gotten used to these picks. We see Panda, of course, that's going to be one of their, of course, staple players. They're still running the Object Shredder, which doesn't have as much effect on a mode like Tower Control where you're not having to break a shield, for example. But they have been a pretty consistent player here for Efficient Effectiveness, and they're going to have to continue to farm those crabs up quickly if they want to have an ideal game here. Qlar are going to be babysitting the tower back to mid. Yadu using that Killer Whale almost exclusively on Panda, who has to dash for their life, and as a result, Qlar are able to step up in their plays and take out Yadu. That's an important pick if they want to try and push the tower in their direction. However, Alluring Airfare getting 2 picks, Plague with a charged Kraken Royale and also a beacon sitting on tower. That's a recipe for success as they get to that first checkpoint.
And I don't want it to be lost here. I think Plague only survived that jump because Centratide threw a wall to protect the super jump. So some specials going to be thrown out here to break this open here before it could ever really get started. But once again, the wall's going to protect Centratide just long enough here. The other two members are going to fight it out. If Yaru rotates fast enough here to close out these other shooters, this push will still have some life in it. And again, Plague is going to land safely here. So they have done a good job of preserving this push and preserving a good solid position. Eventually, if you keep rotating through and giving yourself opportunities, you will break through that first checkpoint. And with another person going down and Panda in a horrible position to take this fight, it looks like, well, nope, there it is. Qlar went behind again. These teams using lifelines at this point to keep hold of the game, Zach.
Yeah, Qlar, as they are wont to do, kind of distracting Yaru like a fly on the wall. They're allowing the rest of their teammates to get in. That's so important when you have players like Centratide getting early picks onto players like Tiger, who we know can be so impactful. And now we see Bunny, who is doing exactly the job set out for them. They have the tri-strike at the ready, and they're being protected by Yaru. So here it comes, but there's Qlar always at the heels of Yaru, and they will fall. Bunny will stay alive as a result of that trade, and now Alluring Airfare able to push the tower even further. A personal best on this map thus far. Plague, speaking of distracting, doing a lot of it, however, will fall as they get to 42, approaching the halfway mark of this game. And Alluring Airfare, you know, it seems like they're kind of sporadic and all over the place, but they have a little recipe and secret to their madness that is working out well in their favor.
Yeah, and this is almost looks like a completely different efficient effectiveness team from what we saw in the earlier game, Zach. They were taking good team fights. They were working up. They were picking their targets around. And for whatever myriad of reasons here, they have not been able to repeat and replicate that same sort of success. Look at this. Now Yaru's going to dive and take two down. And again, because of this double, triple ink strike composition that Alluring Airfare is running, they're able to sneak other players in to attack. Look at this. Who's going to stand on the tower here? It almost doesn't matter. They have an embarrassment of riches to try to do so. They're at the checkpoint again. Yaru still fighting it out here. We are 3 minutes gone in this game, and one team has only scored 1 point thus far, Zach.
Yeah, and it was that matchup of Tiger versus Bunny once again that Bunny was not able to win there. That forces that tower to go back a little bit as a couple of their other teammates were either deceased or pushed a little bit further forward. And that's another trade there from Tiger, this time onto Centratide. Humour not able to get the best of Plague, so Plague will push forward, assisted by that beacon that they're able to jump to if needed. Backing off just to make sure that the Tenatech is going to go down from EE as they get to this final checkpoint once again. Backing off now is Tiger, not able to get a pick again. Centratide set up in a great position here and can see lots of the map. They're going to use the tri-strike here, taking a brief break from their main weapon to make sure that the area around them is painted here as we are in the final minute of play. Qlar, they're loving to bother these more staple players, not even noticing Tiger there, who's able to get a pick, and it is just individual after individual falling here. We're rarely seeing just consistent team fights here. It's just kind of 1v1s all around the board.
Yeah, and now look at this. Centratide is already back here. Yaru never left here. Now Bunny's going to be back here shortly. Yaru fights it out, takes another one out. Panda, who has been dancing around all this carnage this entire time, will use Crab on tower here, and this Crab's not going to have anything to even shoot at. This almost strikes me as a Crab that is just trying to get some control. Look at this. They already figured out where Yaru is coming from. The tricks will not be enough, but Yaru still gets it, despite everything that you would think would mean that Yaru couldn't. Yaru closes out one, is now fighting another, and gets another, and gets a third. Not closing out Tiger there, but you have to imagine every other member of the team can certainly close it out. And in dominating fashion, Alluring Airfare will take the set 4-1 over efficient effectiveness and waltz into the finals of Fable Finals.
Yeah, I think Yaru finally had enough of the shenanigans of Qlar there and had to put an end to it. The 52 can be such an offensive absolute monster when it wants to be, when it's set up behind that splash wall, and when you have Plague jumping in or falling in right behind you to clean up anything that you somehow are not able to, but it wasn't even necessary. Yaru said, I know I'm better than this, and I'm going to prove it, and they did in those final waning moments. I want to talk about the Crab at the end, too. I think you hit the nail on the head. The only thing I can think of for using it at that time and not saving it for overtime was the fact that they might have wanted a little bit more map control in mid, but without having that presence on the tower, Yaru able to just come straight on that side angle into mid and clean up multiple members of Efficient Effectiveness. So Alluring Airfare doing a great job there, showing why they're being so consistent, especially across a longer set like this best of 7 was. And even on a map and mode that Efficient Effectiveness had either won on or had the makings of a win on earlier, they will take the victory in Game 5, win the set 4-1, and secure their place in Grand Finals tomorrow.
And such a silly set to watch over to, and I don't mean that to disparage any of these players. It's just this game can be so hectic at times, and it's pure pandemonium to, again, continue the alliteration. Maybe if we ever get a P name for the team, that could be one that you go with, but a bizarre set of almosts and slip-ups and can't capitalize ends with that, with the most dominant game that we saw these two play, where Alluring Airfare never really let go of the pace of the game. And again, a totally different Efficient Effectiveness than what we saw. Confidence can be a lot. Maybe some of it has to do with playing against a backliner. You're just not sure how to go about it. You fear the laser, you fear the pointer, as it were. But to go ahead and break this down on a further level, Jem, we would love to get your perspective on our winner's final set.
Definitely a heck of a set. While it does have a 4-1 score attached to it, seems pretty dominant from that kind of number for Alluring Airfare. There were definitely a lot of openings that Efficient Effectiveness were able to create in there. What I would say here that Alluring Airfare was able to take advantage was Efficient Effectiveness is a very fast-paced team. They're a team that's going to run at you really quickly and hope to overwhelm you before you're ready for them. But Alluring Airfare had a couple of things going for them that made that a lot more difficult. For one thing, they have a charger. You try to poke your head over the top of Sturgeon Shipyard up into mid like that, and they're going to be able to hit that shot. That's one of those classic places where the charger gets a lot of their picks from, and a lot of these games started out with an opening snipe coming out from Centratide, so that's going to keep the team honest. There are going to be certain angles that you can't approach until you know where that laser's coming from. So that's one thing that's going to slow them down. Another thing that's going to slow them down is having a roller that you have to watch out for. The sharking roller here from Plague came up with a lot of really huge plays, especially one really big important triple that they were able to get on Zone's Hagglefish that entirely clinched that game, made it very, very difficult for EE to make it back in time, forced them to make a bit of a desperation rush that did almost work, to be fair, but that is what put them into that difficult situation in the first place. So now, not only do they need to worry about where the charger laser is, but they also need to worry about painting defensively enough that they can track down that roller and not just get jump scared by it. And it's also worth noting that we've got Yaru on a 52 gal, highest X power player in the entire tournament today, breaking the 2800 X power at their peak. So very technically skilled and playing a 52 gal. That is a weapon that, as we've seen from the past metas of Splatoon 2, is perfectly capable of holding its ground against two players rushing it by itself. And you put that weapon on a player as technically skilled as Yaru is, and that's also going to be a problem pushing in. You can't rush it against these weapons that Alluring Airfare was bringing. And so it started to fall apart a little bit sometimes for EE because they couldn't find a target. They couldn't say, that one right there, everyone's running at them, okay, let's go. They really had to play a little bit more deliberate, and I think as Alluring Airfare started to settle into the set, we started to see that more and more. We started to see Alluring Airfare able to stall the match and kind of take control of the tempo, which has been Efficient Effectiveness's biggest strong suit thus far against the teams that they've played against. We started to see them being able to pull off some set plays. I'm impressed by a lot of the times that we were able to see coordinated pushes from AA, sending the Kraken in one direction and the frontliners in another, getting everyone looking at the charger and then hitting them in the back right corner from someone else. They had a lot of opportunities where they were able to kind of pick EE apart and take advantage of the fact that they're going to throw caution to the wind sometimes and run in, and that all of those times are punishable. So AA definitely showing their caliber as players, showing their quick-wittedness to be able to come up with answers to what EE was trying to throw at them. So EE, not necessarily back to the drawing board, but they are going to have to clean up just a little bit, make it just a little bit less sloppy here and there so that they're not going to get caught out by AA's observant eye. Back to the casters for our losers semifinal here between Gamy Goat and Coral Counterargument.
Thank you for that, Gem. And after their Coral Counterargument, they may have become agitated anthozoans.
Oh,
Yes, I googled that one. I googled that one, folks.
I was about to say, like, what?
I cannot listen.
Scientific names now. Like,
it's been a long time since 7th grade biology, my friend. But Gamy Goat and Coral Counterargument. This is going to be fun, Zach, because these are two teams that we have not gotten to see thus far. They went out in some of the winners sets that we did not get to commentate, and then have made the run through losers bracket. Gamy Goat getting a 2-0 victory over Boisterously Based, then a 2-0 victory over Homeless Humour. And on the other side, Coral Counterargument got the 2-1 victory over Foolish Fusion, and then a 2-1 victory over Deep Dive. So these teams have earned every bit of the opportunity to get here, and the winner will play against Efficient Effectiveness. We'll throw them a look that they have not yet seen. It should be noted that Coral Counterargument was beaten by Efficient Effectiveness in the winner's side, so we do have a little bit of a revenge game should that be the result of this set. We can't get too far ahead of ourselves. You can see here the teams Axel, Tozy, Anakin on Gamy Goat, and Coral Counterargument, plenty of strong players on that side. Bounce, Izanagi, Alexis, and Mari. We're going to be going to Clamblitz Museum d'Alfonsino to start this one out, Zach.
yeah, we've talked about this map and mode a little bit, so we won't go into as eloquent or lengthy a discussion maybe of the map and mode itself. But in terms of, the players and the weapons that they're potentially bringing in here, I think Gamy Goat, them having two players that only have one weapon listed, it's going to be Anakin Red on that Splatana Wiper, as well as Axel 2300 XP with this Splash-O-Matic. That's such an important weapon in the meta still. Whether you're only bringing one or two, or you're bringing one plus a Neo Splash, it remains a staple weapon in the meta today. On the opposite side of things, for Coral Counterargument, they do have one of the players in the top 5 of the standings, that being Bounce, playing some interesting weapons as well. Those two Gal variants that we typically see in the meta, the 52 and the 96 Gal Deco. They, of course, have another meta staple in the Sloshing Machine, but also some curveballs, that Forge that we saw earlier from the last set but didn't get to see, and then the Nautilus 47 and machines themselves, or Splatlings rather, have really sort of come into form. So very interested to see if from either them or any other player we see any machine play, because this map especially lends itself to that kind of positioning and play.
Well, folks, here we are back to the best of 5s at this point. Our next set will be a best of 7, so these teams not a lot of room to make mistakes. And hold on a minute, we got a whole host of weapons you won't see in your Saturday morning Splatoon League. Izanagi bringing out the Tri-Stringer, and Tozy bringing out the Explosher. A couple of backliners cutting it up, Zach.
I want to talk about Kyodai and the Clash Blaster. Are you kidding me? That's such an off-the-meta weapon that is so interesting to see. It's got, in theory, a very interesting kit to it. Splat Bomb, which is one of the most consistent bombs out there. And, of course, that Trizuka. However, it looks like their team, Gamy Goat, is starting to lose the initial fight. Tons of clams being possessed by Coral Counterargument, 17 in total. And they still have 12 even after putting the Power Clam in. The Booyah Bomb comes out, and Mari, on top of putting in some clams, is going to go forward with the Ultra Stamp. They missed the throw, however, onto Anakin Red, who got spotted out by the torpedo, and after a full wipeout, the devastation still done in the first 45 seconds of the match by Coral Counterargument.
Yeah, that is stunning. Very rarely does it work that nicely, where you get 2 or 3 members down, you build your power clam, and you have enough staying power to then get all the way down to 35. It means that everybody picked up a few clams in that scenario and did exactly what they need to. Now, on the other side, they've already taken out one of the frontliners from Gamy Goat here, and Tozy's going to have to move all the way back and was not even able to do just that. You are safe nowhere, my friend. Kyodai tries to take that power claim back to safety, but that's only going to give up your position. And my, oh my, Coral Counterargument is playing at a fantastic pace right now.
Yeah, CC has such a terrifying presence everywhere. The Tri-Stringer, in addition to having a great bit of range, also has the Killer Whale. So even if you don't have a 52, you're still able to get those picks bounce on the Sloshing Machine. We talked about how much of a meta-staple weapon that is, able to not only get the splat, but also save that Booyah Bomb, which they were going to impart there right in front of where they were going to push, but having to sort of wait on it. They have to both expend the special and make sure to try and save the power clan, but they are being set upon by multiple members here, able to just barely jump out as Axel and Tozy were breathing down their neck, and that's not to discount the loadout here of Gamy Goat, who has the crab at their ready, and also they have that Explosher, which is something that we don't see very often, but can still do great when it's sitting atop of that middle spinner.
Oh, a great position there by Alexis to take that one out. Now, Kyodai really not even sure where to shoot it. Does find somebody there. And now, hold on. They've got more than enough players here to continue this push. But this is the difference, Zach. They don't have the same power claims. And again, Red is going to jump in and they will score what I believe was their pity clam. They are going to pay dearly for it here, but getting down to 54 is going to give themselves an actual chance to do it. But did they give up too much? No, they do take out Mary here, and Bounce, who is up in the Booyah Bomb, is now going to have to find another avenue to score, and it appears that there might be a window, albeit one that's closing very quickly.
Yeah, they were going to have to win that trade cleanly, and unfortunately, they don't. Alexis just barely able to get up and put in that power claim, but at what cost? Yet again, Goro Counter-Argument with lots of clams at their disposal, but are they going to be able to place them at Izanagi in a great position there atop that grating to extend their lead to 26? It's going to be Kyodai, though, on the Clash Blaster with just enough range to take them down in a few shots, but we're starting to get lower in time here, 1 minute and 45 seconds. They just have a penalty of 1 power clam worth before they can get back to business as usual, and we're seeing once again that pendulum swing back and forth. We've seen this scene before of Axel being up there with that crab, and it allows them to get in and place that power claim in and almost completely eliminate their penalty as well. The Ultra Stamp could have done so much devastation, not able to make it happen as they get picked. Axel now having to fight in a 1v3. They will fall, and what could have been an exceptional push gets stopped early.
And I would love to, again, hear the comms that were deciding that play there. I think Axel was trying to move over to a spot that they could jump in their power clam, but somebody else was already in, and I believe that power clam was already being jumped in at that time. So that meant that Axel, who could have probably put in some of those power clam, or just regular clams, excuse me, did not do so. I would have to go back and check and see if it would have gotten the lead, but it certainly would have been close. And instead, that miscue gets them no points, gives the opponent another pity clam, and now they have more than enough resources to end this game. Alexis goes for the score. Izanagi follows it up, and we are headed into game 2. Coral Counter-Argument making a statement there.
Yeah, I think they looked quite emphatic in game 1. That was not very, even though it kind of went the distance in terms of almost getting to the end of the game before the knockout was had. I think that was pretty well and truly a stomp here. The defensive efforts from Coral Counter-Argument so strong in the face of multiple specials, shutting down that Ultra Stamp, and there were some missed opportunities there. We saw in the early part of the game the Ultra Stamp throw coming out and missing. I think it was Anakin Red who was able to get the pick right after that. We saw the second one there. It essentially gets popped and then goes down almost a second later, maybe even less so than that. So Coral Counter-Argument not just strong on the offensive, but able to put up a solid defensive wall as well. And we look now at the counter-picking options here for Gamy Goat. And in a best of 5, those windows, those margins for error are a little bit tighter. So you really have to be conscientious with what mode and map you go to. Interested to see if they opt for a more neutral pick that's seen often in tournaments that maybe they've practiced on, or maybe just a personal favorite of some of the players, as these are, again, just free agents coming together for the purposes of this series. So Gamy Goat, they showed some moments of brilliance. I think their crab usage was pretty solid. I think their neutral game wasn't terrible, but it's when they got up to that platform area that things really started to fall apart.
And as the players do take a moment here to reprieve, put in their counter pick, and reshuffle the lobby, we want to remind everybody who is watching here the purpose of this tournament. Remember, this is a free agent event, everybody, as all the Fable events are. So just want to note here, for those of you who are currently looking for a +1 or a +2, or just looking for strong players, I know that's most of you because there aren't that many consistent static teams that we have here. go ahead and take a look at some of these players here. We have called out so many names who have made great plays, and these are hungry players who have put themselves out here trying to look for teammates to compete and further their relationship with this wonderful game that we call Splatoon, and I guess the developers called Splatoon as well. But again, keep these names in mind, folks. There are a lot of great players here who are looking for a new home, and you have to imagine the winners of this will certainly give themselves a fast track to finding a stable roster.
And once again, I think that harkens back to the work that OTD and MIT have put into the website, the statistical gathering, the checking in with players and formulating them into coherent teams that are equal in or roughly equal in standing in terms of their X power, in terms of the weapons that they play, in terms of their standing on the leaderboard. And it really has been interesting to see how that has culminated in this tournament. I love the fact that for Gamy Goat, they have some players that play some really interesting weapons. They have some partially meta and then some very off meta. I think the Clash Blaster is something I didn't expect, even though I certainly saw it as listed first on their list of potential weapons. And to their credit, they've peaked at 2331 for their X power. So pretty strong effort there. It landed them 22nd on the standings. That's the second highest on the team, only behind Anakin Red, who seems to prefer the Splatana Wiper, sitting at 13th on the standings. And for Coral Counterargument, the same thing is true, although with fewer one-tricks. They have that top 5 player in Bounce. They have Alexis TM, who is 18th in the standings, peaking at 2180. Bounce, by the way, 2505 in X Power. That is very, very strong. Maybe the second highest behind Yaru overall. So super, super strong player. Interested to see what they go for. I think, Nine, we might be going to zones if I heard correctly.
Well, surprise, surprise. Splat Zones Hagglefish Market is back. And, you know, thinking about how these teams were geared up for that first game, Zach, this is one of those times where we can actually kind of take a moment back and appreciate what these more unconventional team comps might bring into the action. And we can go ahead and start with Izanagi on that Tri-Stringer, because, you know, Tri-Stringer, I have always thought, is a little underrated as a weapon, especially on the maps where the opponent is at an area that is defending from higher up. So a map exactly like Museum d'Alfonsino, where you can arc those shots up there and put pressure on people from relative safety. This map is a little bit less of that, and certainly the Splatlings are known for being able to hold zone here with relative ease. And of course, we've already seen what Chargers can do here, so I'll be curious to see if Izanagi opts to stay with that, maybe even going with the Reflex. We have actually seen, I know it sounds stunning to play Reflex in something that isn't Turf War, but it is strong here. We often see players go with Tentamissiles on this map. And, you know, on the other side, Zach, does Kyodai really bring, again, that blaster out on this map, on this mode?
You know, I think for Hagglefish, maybe tough to sort of give that its due course. You don't really have the painting output, and maybe you don't need it, but I guess the one thing that does play well to it is that the Inkzuka is going to have some nice long zones or sight lines to be able to use that weapon. So I'm interested as well in Izanagi to see if Izanagi's burden this game is to bring back that Tri-Stringer. Taking a look at the composition, we do indeed see Kyodai back on that Clash Blaster, and Izanagi as well back on the Tri-Stringer. The Explosher as well being stuck to from Tozy there. So not many changes here as we get started with this one.
And I do enjoy Explosher on this map here, being able to, again, set up on that canopy and at least contest zone or come onto this side. But you can see already that their frontliner here on that Wiper has gone down, and that is the tricky part about that weapon. As nice as it is to be able to play it in a quick respawn stealth jump fashion, you do still eventually need to get value out of going in and trying to open things up for your team to make plays. That has not been the case thus far, as we will see the lead briefly change hands here. And now this is the part where it's going to be tricky for Izanagi, because without a lot of support here, Izanagi's not going to be able to keep the zone single-handedly and will eventually have to move up, whereas the Explosher might fare a little bit better in that same position.
Yeah, I wanted to say they found their permanent home, the home of many backliners in that unbeankable tarp there, but they're able to move up. They have Mari back on that wiper, although they're being forced back because they're both spotted out and just because of the output that Gamy Goat is putting out. They have the Crab, they have the Inkstorm, and they also have just the range of that Explosher putting so much pressure on Coral Counterargument. We also had, for a brief second, the Izuka there from Kyodai, who was sitting right on top of zone. That's an unfortunate place to fall, and that's going to start the clock ticking there for Coral Counterargument, who on the back of that, and with Mari barely getting away from that splat bomb, is able to take the zone back and get rid of their penalty.
Yeah, I was about to say that would be tragic if Mari went down to an unforced error on that bomb. That is the weapon that you want to move forward, and now with the Zanagi's support, it appears that they will try to do so. They will go ahead and take out Anakin Red. Now Kyodai up above everybody, trying to close out something there, and is finally able to. Now firing it there, and is just barely going to miss Alexis, so doing a pretty good job there, taking out those two members to at least give the rest of the team a solid foothold to work their way back in, but now, again, the question becomes, how do you go and move forward after you take this zone? You know that you should be able to outscale in paint, but you certainly can't when two of your players have gone down. It does appear that we are going to see the Crab get one player here as Axel tries to move forward. Anakin Red will jump back in, but there just hasn't been enough sustainability here from Gamy Goat.
Yeah, and I can't lie, I was watching the engagement there between Kyodai and Mari in the alleyway. Kyodai putting on some serious pressure and just kind of throwing splat bombs in behind them, and Mari finally having enough of it, pops the Ultra Stamp. Kyodai just has enough time to get out right before that throw landed exactly where they would have been, but it lands out in the middle of the map to where Gamy Goat not just now able to get the zone back and give a very chonky penalty of 54 over to Coral Counterargument, who has been doing very well with their main weapons, that sloshing machine and the T-Tech, for instance, to hold it down. It's going to be Bounce, that high elo player we were talking about, getting a large portion, the lion's share, if you will, of picks there, and now they're really moving forward into Gamy Goat's area.
Yep, you're going to see all kinds of sub-weapons be throws, and this is where dealing with Izanagi is going to be so annoying. You see immediately two people go up there, and it appears that the bomb and Tozy is going to be enough there. Tozy's actually going to get another one here. So hold on a minute, they very quickly identified where that attack was coming from, chose which player they were going to go after and cleaned it up. Kyodai actually got another one there just off screen. Axel gets another one over there. And not only is this going to be a retake of the zone, this is a very solid position there. Axel needs to very quickly try to build up, take all of this paint, and get a Crab here. If you can get a Crab in this situation and pick out one or two players here, the lead is not that far from reach.
Yeah, Axel absolutely helping to facilitate that, breathing down the neck of who they knew was going to be that problem player in Bounce. And now Mari able to get the splat there with the Torpedo. The zone still ticking down into the 20s now, and Mari needs to come away with some big picks here if they want to retain the lead. But the Inkstorm staying on the zone is going to just not have the effect that they wanted it to. Just barely with time, not able to get it. The penalty given back over to Gamy Goat, and Bounce now back in a prime position. Alexis, I think, helping to get that pick there on to the wiper, and now once again attempting to push forward. You see those tri-strikes landing in the plat area of the spawn of Gamy Goat, and Bounce preferring to stay pretty much the whole game in this right-hand side alleyway. They've eliminated their penalty, and now it's going to be a mad dash in these last 20 seconds to see if Gamy Goat can get the zone back and not relinquish control.
Oh my gosh, Bounce got another one there as Axel went down to that, and yeah, we're going to take a nice look here at Bounce, who is going to try to come over here and punish Anakin Red. And even if they had managed to keep that game going into overtime, the writing was on the wall. Zach, I'm so glad that you counted Bounce there at the very end and really drew the attention to that portion of it, because when you have a sloshing machine, you want it to go to the positions on the map where it can be most effective. Yes, eventually it's going to get involved in a scramble situation, but that weapon can be so very painful to displace. And on Hagglefish Market, if they can jump up onto that grading and crash in when it gets into everybody trading paint on the zone, it's all the better. You could see the set play and the game plan from Coral Counterargument. And on the other side, Gamy Goat had some very, very nice play when they could pick one or two players they wanted to go after, throw their specials there. And despite the knockout, they were 1 point away, I guess 2 points technically, from taking the lead at 1 point. So they are not outmatched by that much.
Yeah, if it had been a thunderstorm instead of a light drizzle, I think they would have had just enough ink to get control of the zone there, and maybe we'd be looking at a different score. But for now, we're going to be seeing, regardless of the result, the last counter pick coming out from Gamy Goat here. We've seen Clam Blitz, we've seen Splat Zone, so maybe Rainmaker or Tower Control to come out next. One being very different from the other. I think maybe pretty close there on Splat Zones, closer than it was on Clam Blitz. So maybe you go for Tower Control as your mode if you're Gamy Goat, if you want to go for that more measured style of play. And again, we have to look at the weapons here. We still had Kyodai on that Clash Blaster, and they have a couple of longer range options in their wheelhouse, including one that could provide a second Crab Tank if they truly wanted that extra range in those Splat Dualies. That also has a pretty fantastic kit with the Suction Bomb going along with that special. So with Anakin Red and Axel's weapons all but locked in, and Tozy having picked nothing but the Explosher for 2 games straight, you kind of have to tailor your pick around those regardless of whether Kyodai swaps off that Clash Blaster or not. For Coral Counterargument, as far as the score goes, and as far as most of the team fights, everything working out well in their favor, so relatively few adjustments to be made unless there's really something about that map and or mode that they want to alter.
Yeah, and this is the one tricky part here when you only have one weapon that you can really play, is especially with understanding that Tozy is probably going to be sticking with one of these anchor picks. It really does put the onus on Anakin Red to get a lot of value every time you go in for a dive with that Wiper. And you know, that's the tricky part about playing these quick respawn stealth jump weapons. I kind of called it out earlier, but yes, that weapon is going to go in, is going to distract, is going to pull different pieces of attention, it's going to pull aggro. But again, there has to be follow-up with that, right? Even if you go in and don't get anybody, you can still achieve success with that dive, but it's oh so difficult to do if everybody isn't on the same page or understand when it's happening. So we will once again head to Rainmaker's Scorch Gorge, which appears to be a favorite of these teams today when it comes to game number 3 of a best of 5. It has happened 2 other times on the winner's side of the bracket. And Zach, this is going to be an intriguing one, given that Coral Counterargument once again looked so strong and really has no reason to change up anything from those first 2 games.
Yeah, Scorch Gorge has really emerged as a favored map, not just for Rainmaker, but for Clam Blitz as well. Those 2 faster paced modes. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. One, you have these, you almost have a second level, even though it's very sparse in the way that it looks. You have that solid middle ground. You have those grates that go back and forth to the opposing team's area if you have a weapon that prefers to walk around rather than swim around. And you also have tons of areas for if you want to get high ground before popping a Booyah Bomb or a Tri-Strike. And of course, we've mentioned Crab Tank ad nauseum, so I won't harp on that any further, but there's just so many opportunities to pop your special in a way that's going to give you great sightlines before you make that push. And whether in Rainmaker or Clam Blitz, you need those to aid you in giving your carrier, whether it's of the Power Clam or in this case, the Rainmaker itself, an avenue with which to push forward. And that's going to be something that both teams need to incorporate.
Well, taking a look here, it is going to again be the same coming out here from Gamy Goat, and much the same on the other side as well. So the teams feel that the correct weapons are in their hands. There's just more to be done from the gameplay side of things, and I'm intrigued to see what Tozy does here. This is a difficult mode for the Explosher here when you don't have a lethal bomb and you don't have a way to put out a quick high damaging hitbox in front of you when the game starts to get away. You can see right there, took a poke at bounce relatively far away, probably thought it was okay, but Alexis had already moved through, and thankfully Axel will rotate around to clear one out, and they'll also get rid of bounce. So the big threat from this push appears to be gone for the time being. If they get everybody else back, they should have a decent look at the defensive side, so credit to them for holding serve.
Axel applying some solid pressure with the crab, but I want to talk about Kyodai one more time just because we so rarely get the opportunity to talk about the Clash Blaster. You could see that they were running 2 mains of Ink Saber subs, so they're essentially using that weapon in part to just throw and continuously divert attention with that Splat Bomb, which has a relatively quick detonation and a larger blast radius than a lot of other specials. Axel getting another crab up right in the middle of the map as that Rainmaker is going to reset back to mid. Axel, however, will fall. Anakin Red, who was one of the first to go down in this game, looking unfortunately at a 1v2, and that will end up being the result for the favored of that matchup as both of those players get that pick and then almost immediately fall. Kyodai has the pressure built up as well with the Ingzuka. I think they're not going to get anything, at least with those last two shots, but they cleave a clear path for Anakin Red as the Rainmaker carrier to maybe make it to this checkpoint.
No, not at all. Mari gonna close that one in there. Now, I was about to make the joke, or the goodness gracious, the joke, Zach, that was the longest I had ever seen in two teams only score 1 point between them on this map, and still very much the same here. Simply not willing to let go of those defensive positions, and because the teams are having to use their specials to win in mid, they don't have the way to break through, but it appears they finally managed to do so simply by having two people attack on the right side and then putting the Rainmaker at the left. A lovely misdirection here as Tozy will now go down. A quick pop there by Mari, and now Izanagi's going to run it again. Anakin Red goes down again. Kyodai will dive on top here, and they will all go down as Axel also goes down. It's once again just Tozy here with the explosion. Anakin Red trying to provide a little bit of defense, but Anakin Red went on the other side as they moved it forward down just to 9 points, and this is more of what we were expecting from Coral Counterargument.
Yeah, Anakin, I think, mistaking the forest for the trees there a little bit, just trying to flank around the entire way to get a couple of picks and missing the Rainmaker carrier there, Izanagi, who's just sitting in one spot, question mark, for some reason, and Axel swimming through some enemy ink. We have a disconnect. That makes more sense. So unfortunately, a DC there on the side of Coral Counterargument. That is going to be rough for them. However, they have a substantial lead built up, and with 2 minutes left to play, they could still pull this one out. Izanagi is not one of the ones that DC. They were able to maintain it. So Kyodai trying to get something going here in this odd man advantage with their special. They at least once again cleave that path. They actually pick off Mari there, and the checkpoint's going to be gained for Gaming Goat. This could be the opportunity they were looking for as they force a 3-man wipeout.
Oh, well, this is the difficult part here as Axel goes ahead and fires up the crab at the spot that you would usually fire it off. The funny thing is that even with a 3v4, this is actually a pretty defendable position as right now Anakin Red cleaves through a couple members. Another wipeout through. I may have spoke too soon. I don't even know if anybody's going to respawn before this thing gets the point. They will take the lead. They will knock it out, and hey, we'll double check everything, but Gamy Goat does get a victory there. It was a rough game for them, maybe a gift from above, but a win is a win, and right now Gamy Goat is not in a position to say no.
Absolutely. You take your wins where you can get them, and with it being almost 2 minutes into the match, I think tough to reset that one unless there's a fantastic reason or something in the rules that would allow for it. But Gamy Goat giving a win there on Rainmaker Scorch Gorgeous. Coral Counterargument loses a player, but that will be a blessing in disguise in the form of giving them an opportunity to get a counter pick so they can take the lessons that they learned from these 3 games and the success that they had on Clan Blitz and Zones. We're likely going to see tower control next if we're going down the row of modes here. It just has to determine where we're going to go. We've already seen Hagglefish, Inkblot, and Sturgeon, very popular choices, and Mako Mart, maybe the dark horse, the sleeper pick of the available tower control maps here, something that is not seen as much. I think oftentimes much more a splat zones map in many high-level tournaments here, but still can be very fun to watch because it is not too dissimilar from Inkblot Art Academy in that the checkpoints are locked right up against walls that if, for instance, you're using a splash wall, you can bounce that off to back onto the tower. And of course, regardless of the map, will be an absolute catalyst for seeing Booyah Bombs and Tri-Strikes land in that general area.
Well, again, this will now be Coral Counterargument's counter picks. We haven't really gotten to see the Coral counter pick, as it were, so we have much to speculate on in terms of what they are going to be going to. We certainly won't anticipate too much coming out from a composition change from them. We really, again, no reason to. And we can now talk a little bit more about if they get this victory, they will get a rematch with the team that knocked them into losers. Efficient Effectiveness did get the 2-0 victory over Coral Counterargument way back in winners quarterfinals. So this should be a real nice opportunity for them if they get this victory to run the entire losers bracket gambit and then get a chance to take it back over Efficient Effectiveness. Meanwhile, Gamy Goat clearly, Zach, they aren't going to change their comp. I think we can firmly put that one to rest right now here. If there was ever a time to do it, Rainmaker might have been the time. I think that for them, it's going to be a matter of, again, not getting so caught out in a couple of those fights and trying to make plays happen. I think Axel is playing a very patient game with that Splash-O-Matic, trying to use the crabs as entry specials, with Kyodai doing the same. But the problem is, if you put both of those together, that's two of your main weapons that have been taken out and really can't move forward at that point. So if your frontliner in that respect, being Anakin Red, goes down too early, you have two specials that are sort of sitting ducks, and you're not going to be able to make much progress with that. It's a fast-paced game, and I think that has been one of the big things that has slowed them down, just not enough follow-up by virtue of the weapons that they have chosen and the specials they have.
Yeah, I think if you're Gamy Goat, maybe the weakness that you have to exploit is Mari on that Splatana Wiper. I think they're often one of the first ones into the fight, and ergo one of the first to go down if they're not able to win those 1v1s, or if you're able to get an odd man opportunity there. So that can give you a clean open, as opposed to going up against somebody like Bounce or even Izanagi in the backline there, who apply so much pressure consistently at a mid to longer range. Alexis, of course, being that support player that has been so consistent in being able to farm mostly tri-strikes, of course, with that Tenatech. And we return to Scorch Gorge, and it will not be tower control. It will be the return instead to Clam Blitz. Not a bad decision at all there from Counterargument, rather, who won most emphatically, I think, their game in Game 1 on Museum de Alfonsina with this same mode.
Well, if you're confident on Scorch Gorge, why not run it right back and keep it going here? They truly seemed like once they got a solid look at the map, they were able to move forward. They understood who they wanted to attack, where, and how. So Clam Blitz, we know how scary it can be on this map and mode. You can see, as you put it, Zach, the pendulum come back and forward pretty hard, but you can also see sometimes teams just cut bait, maybe leave a couple of clams on the board to maintain control of mid, bait the opponent to come back out and attack it here. And with the way that Coral Counterargument has been moving, you have to assume that that's something they're going to try to do, not going to give Gamy Goat any real opportunities to crash back in mid and take advantage of that slower comp.
So we're going to see if compositionally things change. I highly doubt it, especially since we return to the same map with just a different mode. It's been a little bit since Gamy Goat lost in Game 1, so maybe what they've learned in these last couple of games will hopefully play out for them. Super interested to see how, with Clam Blitz, Kyodai on that Clash Blaster plays this one out, where in a lot of situations they've stayed a little bit further back in the mid to long ranges and chucked those splat bombs into where their enemies were known to be hiding. That's also a pretty solid weapon to go around and grab some of those extra clams when they actually get an opportunity to push forward. And actually, Commentators Curse call it, but we will not be seeing a Clash Blaster from Kyodai. Instead, all of the same gear, it looks like, but swapping over to the Forge Splattershot Pro with that Suction Bomb and Booyah Bomb to try and provide them another tool for entry.
Well, it's an interesting choice here, and if there was ever a time to bring it out, it would be now. So I do like the more sustainability focused comp here that will bring into the action. Of course, we talked plenty about what happens on the other side, and again, the recipe has not changed here. They send Anakin Red in, they follow it up with a special, now two specials. This is one of the biggest ink storms I've seen in my life. Fantastic camera work there. And there are still points to be had here, depending on when Kyodai lands. Toss a couple more in there. Go ahead and get it. Anakin Red jumped in and maybe didn't need to continue that fight. Maybe could have gone back to mid. They gave up an awful lot to get it, but they did get past that vaunted 60-point marker that we so often talk about, Zach.
Yeah, for better or for worse, I think Kyodai's strategy played out exactly as we foresaw it there. They have the Booyah Bomb. They're able to use it as cover to pick up a few more clams, and they get those clams into the basket. Now, they're likely the only member there, and the rest of their members are coming back from spawn, but if you know you're likely not going to be in a position to either get out or jump out, maybe you just take the points that you can gain easily with the special, since you're not going to be saving much of it going back to spawn. So now, as we see the crab yet again from Axel, we also see the Explosher ready to throw out another Ink Storm at the right opportunity, and Coral Counterargument on the flip side trying to hold things down, but they get picked As far as their sloshing machine goes, that's a big threat out of the way in the form of Bounce, but Izanagi, not just with the main weapon, but with that respawn Punisher as well, going to be delaying any forward momentum for Gamy Goat.
Yeah, delaying forward momentum, but this is the first time here as we enter basically the 2-point mark in this game that Gamy Goat has been controlling the pace of the game. As I say that though, Mari is going to run forward here, take one member out, and take Tozy out as well. Will go down for the trouble, but a double for the trouble is a-okay in most respects. The other members didn't really build anything off of that though. Interestingly enough here, maybe Bounce went down a little early and Alexa sensed the moment was right to dive in, but that is going to open up a lot of space for them to move through. Bounce is going to try to fight it out with Anakin Red. Anakin Red will get the better. A huge fight victory there because they were pushed up in a great spot. And now Gamy Goat doing a solid job defending. And again, no power clams here for Coral Counterargument as Tozy gets another punish.
Yeah, solid job defending. And I think one thing that Mari is doing a solid job of is at least staying alive early enough to farm that Ultra Stamp up. I think they're doing a great job this game of not going down too early and using that as an opening advantage point. Axel going to fall as well as Bounce, so it's going to be effectively a 1-for-1 as Anakin Red is able to avenge Axel. And there's that stamp we were talking about. Mari throwing it once again a bit too early, and once again against Anakin Red. For some reason, they just can't lock onto Anakin Red. We saw it on Museum de Alfonsino in Clam Blitz in Game 1, and now almost exactly the same thing happening, just at a different point in the map as Axel getting a pick onto the Tenatech. And now with a minute 45 left, Coral Counterargument, the map in mid is still pretty split. They have 11 clams, but it's not exactly a huge amount. They need to find something and get it going here, but they've lost 2 members. And Gamy Goat, I think, using that DC from last game as fuel to say, we're still in this.
Yeah, still in this and controlling this game really from the get-go. Tozy has done a fantastic job of using not only that Explosher, but also the point sensors to control that middle tower. They use that to then move people up onto that tower to set up their crabs, and then they just trust the other 2 members of their team to go forward and make plays off of that. It's a replicable formula, and that's so important. As now Anakin Red moves forward, should have an opportunity to take out Bounce here, taking advantage of that, well, no, never mind, went down anyway. I was going to talk about how the swords interact with it, but instead now the game has changed entirely there because they maybe dove a little bit too far. Are they trying to set up a jump or simply trying to go for the attack? Finally, Mari will take out Anakin Red with that. Now Kyodai goes down, and oh no, Zach, not like this!
Oh, deciding to stamp them instead of arguing for the throw there. It's the lead and then some by a dramatic amount, and Bounce finishing this one the way that they started it, holding onto that Booyah Bomb for as long as possible to help maintain map control. And it's Mari, not just with the offense, but able to go back and get a lot of those clams. They see Kyodai at the top. Are they going to be able to duck and dodge around? And they just won't be able to. However, the barricade will come up, but with 15 seconds left and no clams held by Gamy Goat. This is a nightmare situation in a must-win game.
Yep, and Kyodai has already gone now down to Bounce here. Bounce is in a really good position to keep going. No one's going to be able to immediately follow up. Tozy is going to jump back here and grab it. That is 6 clams now that Tozy is going to give up in order to make this happen. Now Bounce is going to fire up there at Axel. Will be taken out, but that's the crab tank already gone. Anakin Red needs to get major value out of this Ultra Stamp with 2 down. That's a good start. Chasing after Izanagi and not going to be able to get it. They will break open the basket, but a lot of work has yet to be done. 3 members standing in front. It's just Anakin Red who is going to have a rough landing here. It's a wipeout at the end and a victory for Coral Counterargument, who earns their rematch with, oh my goodness, it starts with an E and I've already forgotten it, efficient effectiveness in the losers final.
Yeah, Anakin Red there had the Ultra Stamp, but unfortunately caught in the Dragon's Breath that was the Killer Whale from Izanagi, having an impact basically from the spawn point. And Mari, I think, more than redeeming themselves with their gameplay there, had a fantastic job of holding on to those Ultra Stamps and being able to use them at the right times. They got picks with the throws, they got picks with the actual stamp and the maneuverability. They created space for their team, and that was a very underrated part of their game that allowed them to come back, along with the consistency of the Booyah Bombs coming out from Bounce. They were able to use one as an entry point. They had enough time to farm one up as the clams were going into the basket, which helped maintain that space and give them the opportunity to get close to a knockout, and if nothing else, stop Gamy Goat from being able to have a chance with about 15 seconds left once they finally got their bearings back about them, from even finding Clams, getting back into mid, and earning a chance to save that game in the final seconds there. Coral Counterargument winning this one 3-1 and is one set away from earning their spot in the grand finals.
A fantastic set here, where as the games went on, Gamy Goat did start to piece things together. That first couple of games, they looked like they were really outmatched. They did get their victory, and then against Coral Counterargument in that final game, they finally looked to have a real strategy that they could replicate over and over. It simply wasn't enough, and we're going to go ahead and pass this on over now for some further analysis to Jem, Jem, I'm sure you've had a moment to mull this one over. What can you tell us about that last set?
Well, I definitely agree with you there, Nine, that Gamy Goat was piecing things together as time was going on. Early on in that first game one, I was like, oh man, this is going to be a sweep. Besides the wipe that they got on Coral Counterargument after their score down to 35 points, Gamy Goat did not get a splat for the first minute and 45 seconds of that game. It was extremely dominant. Coral Counterargument was just not going down at all. And I thought that was going to be the story of it. And it looked, a little bit better on Zone's Hagglefish. They were able to scrap at least a little bit. But the big thing that really got them on Zone's Hagglefish was they just didn't have the paint output that they brought to the zone. All of the fights were getting drawn down into the alleyways, and so there was nobody there except Tozy doing their darndest on the Explo to try and counter, 2 or 3 players' paint, throwing out all of these excellent ink storms that no one was able to actually follow up with because they were all in the alleyways. So Coral Counterargument got just a whole bunch of almost free points all the way ticking down because there wasn't quite enough focus going down on the zone. And it was also looking bad on Rainmaker Scorch up until the DC happens, up until you see someone standing still for that long in a game of Splatoon, you know what's happening. It's the Switch netcode. They go down and, Gamy Goat is going to get one for free, and you look at that and you go, okay, well, we'll take those, as they say in NorCal Melee, but that's also not necessarily them proving anything. But I think they figured something out, because when they came back to Scorch, they definitely had a little bit more of a game plan. I think one of the issues was that on their previous comps, all Coral Counterargument really had to do was track down Anakin Red. Because if they could do that, the Crab was going to be pretty far back, the backliner and Tozy was going to be pretty far back, and the Clash is always looking for their teammates to start the fights instead of them. So if it's not Anakin Red, who's going to engage? They were able to find Anakin Red early on in Rainmaker Scorch, but in Game 4, with the slightly more mobile Forge that they brought in, with Axel playing a little bit more active a role on the front line, they were able to get a lot more done. It just came down to one moment where Bounce gets a couple with the Booyah Bomb, Marie gets the stagger with the hammer, and all of a sudden it went from 0 to 17 points just like that. It was just one big mistake, but Gamy Goat was looking the best that they had all set in that last match there, and they should definitely feel pretty happy with how far they've come and how far they were able to make it in that set. So, congratulations to them, but we are not quite done yet, because we've got losers finals coming up between Efficient Effectiveness and Coral Counterargument, and so it is time for us to send it back to our casters to talk about what's going on there.
Well, thank you, Jem, and man, one mistake. It's a beautiful game we play, Zach.
Yeah, and it's I mentioned earlier about how the length of the set can sometimes minimize the impact that mistakes can make, but sometimes that really is the true catalyst or turning point that you can look back on and say, maybe that was the moment that we could have turned this set on its head. And unfortunately, those situations, when they happen, it's tough, but you have to move forward, and some of that is the mental game that takes place in Splatoon 3. Is you have to be able to put a game behind you, multiple games behind you, and move forward with what you know, what you've learned, and what you're confident in, especially if you've been scrimmaging and practicing. And looking forward now to Efficient Effectiveness versus Coral Counterargument here. some of these players are going to be a new puzzle for Coral Counterargument to solve. You know, we've talked about Panda being so consistent on that Splash-O-Matic, Cooler on both the Dark Tetris and the Octobrush. Tiger and Bounce is going to be a matchup I'm super interested to see. I think that might be the head-to-head matchup of the day here on the Sloshing Machine, as they've both had a massive offensive impact and impact with their special in all of the games that they've played so far. And then, of course, the support from Starro and Alexis. So definitely a great matchup. I love seeing these free agents get their chance at the spotlight here. I'm sad only one of them honestly can make it to Grand Finals, because this feels almost like a baby Grand Finals. And starting with Tower Control on Mako Mart as the first map in mode, I talked a bit about this one earlier. It's not too dissimilar from an Inkblot Art Academy, just with a little bit more open space, a little bit more breathing room, and for your flankers, some more alleyways that actually are impactful, that actually take you back to mid pretty easily and aren't as, easy to get caught in with how small they are. They're a little bit more fragile. They're a little bit more narrow, especially the actual hallway leading to that side area. But they can certainly be made use of. And characters like Mari, who are on that Splatana Wiper, they could have a great effect if they're able to harness those.
Well, folks, we finally got the rematch. If you were following along, these two teams played back in winners quarterfinals in Match D. Coral Counterargument has run the gambit and ready to make their argument as to why that set was a fluke, and they are ready to strike revenge here. Tower Control of Mako Mart, efficient effectiveness versus the Coral Counterargument. This should be a fantastic set here. Again, as you can see, it is a best of 7, and the winner will move on to face Alluring Airfare in tomorrow's finals of the FABL Finals, but there is work to be done before that. Taking a look here, Tiger's going to switch back over to the Tri-Slosher, and on the other side, we're going to see much the same coming out of Coral Counterargument. Double Splash plus Tri-Slosher. Zach, what do you see?
Well, we have the Wiper v Wiper matchup, which is super interesting. They're running exactly the same main stats. They have the comeback, they have the quick respawn, and they have the stealth jump. And I love the Tri-Slosher. I love seeing that from Tiger. I think this is an interesting pick. And there is your first head-to-head matchup as Tiger wins it over Bounce. They're going to get a second pick there on to Izanagi. They get the 3 and the 4. A full wipeout forced by Tiger. And they have the Inkjet still to boot. This is a huge opening for efficient effectiveness, who, as you mentioned, are trying to prove that they belong in the Grand Finals.
Oh, and this is going from bad to worse. That first checkpoint fell, and their frontliner went with it as well. As soon as Tiger opts to let this thing rip, everything is going to break loose. Oh, it's going to go down as well as Tiger comes through. Credit the members of Coral Counterargument for really minimizing the damage that could have been had there. Tiger will land, but everybody knows where Tiger is at. So you have to imagine for the time being, they won't drop down willy-nilly. As I say that, though, it is going to be Mario who drops down, but drops down with an Ultra Stamp on the other side. So some real pain going through here as we have a delayed 3 down here as Coral Counterargument finally is going to catch their breath after a devastating open here. They did manage to preserve their checkpoint, their second checkpoint that is, so maybe not the worst it could have gone, but now as Panda moves through, Tiger's going to continue to come out. Efficient effectiveness looking much more like they have throughout the entire tournament.
That's Tiger getting 2 early picks, and there's a third onto Izanagi. They continue to have such a presence. I wanted to compliment CC on how quickly they came back after finding their bearings and getting map control in mid, but the Tiger just can't be tamed here. The eye of the Tiger, if you will, is hot in search of victory, and QR actually getting picked there by Bounce. Normally with that Octobrush, they play such an aggressive role, relegated this time to Tower Carrier, only pushing it to 29. I think they had already gotten to that point. And now back to CC trying to find their bearings once again. They have to clean up their overlook area so Izanagi can have an effect with their weapon, really. They're able to farm up the Killer Whale, but I'm not sure they get a pick there. Panda will fall. There's Mari once again with the Ultra Stamp. I think waiting just a second too long, or maybe just the delay of the throw itself, forcing that throw to miss, or the members of EE being able to get away from it. And Tiger was in the backline that whole time, just now going down, and with the match halfway over, it's been all EE so far.
And I love how quickly and decisively they are playing. The phrase that I so often use in this game is whatever your plan is, do it quickly. You saw they identified where one player was. They tried to put a special there. They tried to collapse on that. They were able to get one, may have given up a little bit too much in the process, but you can understand what they've been doing thus far. Now, CC is going to be able to break through here. And now once again, it's Mari who is trying to crash in and break this game open, is going to be able to ward off at least one player. And now it's a 2-2 situation here. Bounce desperately needs to survive as Izanagi finally does get the punishment here. Somebody needs to jump on the tower to preserve it here. They're going to have Mari do it. They managed to push it to the checkpoint. They still have 10 more points they have to clear, and it'll be a difficult 10 points. But as long as the tower is in this spot, they should have a real look at it. But of course, who else? The Eye of the Tiger.
You're telling me this guy's only like 2340 XP
I refuse to believe it.
Right?
I refuse to believe it.
That's right. But I want to harken back to something you said a long time ago, Nine, which is that on tower control, it's not always ideal or optimal to have your anchor player or backliner on the tower. And I think Izanagi did that perfectly. It's only when they got on the tower by force that they fell to Tiger. Before that, they were laying the groundwork, the foundation. They were painting for their teammates. They were building up their special. And that was doing so well for them. It was only when they were forced to try and keep that push going that they fell and bounced, getting a pick there, a very important one onto Panda, looking for another one onto Keeler, who's able to get away with just a hit on them and try to fight back, but a delayed double will end up in their death as they try to pop the Booyah Bomb here. We're back to mid, and with 40 seconds left to go, we'll see if Coral Counterargument can continue what they had started with that push to 39.
Oh, well, it's not looking good right here. They weren't able to clear out the Wiper, and I love seeing a Wiper get a hit and then immediately start moving, trying to track down somebody else, make themselves a little scarce from that fight. They can work under this side with a little bit of immunity because of the fear that Tiger provides. Instead, it's Tiger who's coming around the backside just as you think that you have identified where the actual threat is. Tiger comes from behind, now going at Alexis, who is firing the other way. Now Mari desperately trying to get on the tower out of necessity. Tiger firing will take out Izanagi. Mari is there to at least preserve this overtime. A lot of work is yet to be done, and some miracles will need to happen.
As a Tri-Slosher player myself, I definitely will be taking notes and looking at the VOD again of this gameplay from Tiger, but look at the engagement happening there between Alexis and the Starro player using that hammer, trying to get something going, gets the Alexis, but they're going to fall in the backline. We also have the Booyah Bomb coming out as well as the Killer Whale. That's going to force two down. That's a 2v2 situation. QLR going to fall. It's actually just Tiger left, and they'll go down. Can somebody get on the tower in overtime? Can Starro win the battle? No, it's Alexis, that core player that wins it as the backbone for their team, and Coral Counterargument able to survive and take it in overtime to win game one.
We said miracles need to happen. What a stunning reversal at the very end. A few different fights and things that you can keep up on, but Zach, if that super jump hadn't come in, or had come in just a couple of seconds later, that game would have been over. They were right at the end. There's just a couple seconds where nobody can be at the tower, and the game still goes before the tower starts moving back. That jump landed at exactly the right time to then win that one-on-one there. Of course, it's easy to say if you lose that one-on-one, the game is over. But if you tie, if you trade, the game is over in that situation. I cannot believe that Coral Counterargument pulled that one through.
Well, this speaks to the resiliency of this team, and looking at their journey through losers, I'm actually not surprised. You see, they went 2-1 against Foolish Fusion, 2-1 against Deep Dive, and then 3-1 against Gamy Goat. So they have not had an easy time of it going through this losers bracket after going down here in winners quarterfinals in match D. So really the tenacity of the team and the ability to say never give up despite how close it was, they come away with the victory there, and that's huge for boosting your ego and building that momentum in a larger set like this, where you need to keep those victories, small or large, in the back of your mind, even if you can't exactly rely on every success from game to game.
We're going to be going on to Rainmaker's Scorch Gorge next. So again, a favorite of these teams. I'm not sure I've ever seen so much Rainmaker's Scorch Gorge. I didn't know this map mode was so beloved, but we are going back again. And if you're efficient effectiveness here, you are happy that this is a best of 7 because you now have plenty of time to recollect yourself here after just a catastrophic way for that game to end. If any of those bounces go your way, if one trade goes the other way, if you don't trade a certain way, you win that. Tiger cleared that tower, got both of the people who were on tower there, thinking that was probably going to be enough. The jump comes in and your last member can't quite close it out. So going to Rainmaker's Scorch Gorge, where they have to feel pretty good. The one unfortunate part about this counter pick, Zach, is that Coral Counterargument pre-DC looked dominant on this map. So you're counter picking immediately into something that your opponent just played, and played pretty well, I might add.
Yeah, it is tough. You kind of have to take your lumps when you're doing counter picking. You have to be more confident in yourself as a team than especially even knowing still the successes that the team you're going up against, whether you know them or not, has when you're making these picks. And you have to stay true to yourself. I think it's more risky to say this team we've seen play poorly on this map, let's pick it, than it is to say we know we can play well on this map and mode, so let's pick it. So I think they're making the right move there with knowing their ability to fight back, especially because Rainmaker can be such a fast swinging motion going back and forth between team fights, to where if you get them down, if you take down the Rainmaker carrier and take down enough at the right opportunity, you could be at their checkpoint and moving past it before they can regroup.
Well, take a breath and dive back in. That is the name of the game. Tiger is going to be sticking on the Tri-Slosher, and not even the variant that you commonly see in Rainmaker. Really must like that Inkjet. And on the other side, it is the comp that Coral Counterargument is going to take to their graves, apparently.
Well, and they bring in at least 3 last-ditch effort. They still have Izanagi with the respawn Punisher on that Tri-Stringer, so picks from them are going to be that much more important. However, they're currently being swept up in a tidal wave to where they're the last one alive here. Can they survive? Tiger, we talk about breathing down their neck. Izanagi just has time to get away to pop that killer whale to try and get Tiger, who's floating in the air after the Rainmaker gets hit on the checkpoint. They're going to pick up the Rainmaker now. It's going to be the Tenatech carrier with tons and tons of room to go through. They would have gone down regardless, I think, because of that Ultra Stamp, but taken down beforehand. Mari will fall as well to Panda. This one might end here, Nine.
Oh my goodness, and thank goodness for the quick respawn that came back out and made that possible there. Bounce is going to close that one out and take out basically 3 different players to get a delayed wipeout, but all the way to 19, Zach, it is so difficult. You can see where that Rainmaker stopped as they're going to opt to pick it up here. Interestingly enough, they're going to have to get at least halfway up that very, very narrow hallway where the opponent knows exactly where you have to go in order to do it, usually by way of forcing their way through with a special or 2. But first things first, they've got to cleanly get through this first checkpoint. Alexis is going to get the revenge kill that time, but there's a Crab waiting on this side, a T-Tech waiting on that side, and yeah, that's a dead Rainmaker.
Yeah, there are not that many sides to go on to. You kind of have to pick the lesser of 2 evils there, as it were, and efficient effectiveness, to their credit, doing such a great job of holding down mid. Kueller trying to go in with the W or Reef slider and gets a little bit more control, but not any picks, as we see the storms coming out basically from both sides. I think a Booyah Bomb and a Storm, as Bounce is going to fall. Now Mari trying to get a pick, but Tiger will take the best of them even in the midst of their Ultra Stamp. They're going to help with a pick there onto Izanagi, as Panda the entire time is holding onto the Rainmaker, and now it's the T-Tech player once again carving them a path. Do they have the maneuverability? And no, it looks like Mari, whether with the torpedo or their main weapon, is going to take down not just the Rainmaker carrier, but QR as well, to force a 3-down situation.
And Tiger is still here, of course, going to fight through everybody. Mari very nicely will close that one down. Was very close to going down themselves there, but again, they have not gotten a real opportunity to set up their own push. Have to be very careful not to go down to any of these wayward bombs. You can take a look here. With the Tetras down here, this does mean there should be an opportunity that you can move forward without having to look back, but Panda narrowly escapes, and that's going to mean that there's once again going to be a Crab sitting on the pedestal when they opt to use it. Kular moves to work the other part, and this is the real trick. You need a special to neutralize, and doing just that is Mari's Ultra Stamp. So, hey, that's the big threat that's immediately gone on the defensive side, but all the while, Tiger says, well, thank you, people who have to rely on your special weapon to do things. I'm just going to go forward and clean this one up, break down this push single-handedly.
Yeah, and speaking of special weapons doing things, Bounce and QR effectively trade out specials there with the Booyah Bomb and the Reef Slider going down at the same instant here with 1:45 left to go. Now it's going to be efficient effectiveness, trying to find the right opportunity to engage as they allow the Rainmaker to reset back into mid. We see that Tiger v Bounce matchup yet again go the way of Tiger as Mari will fall as well. The backup from QR coming just a second too late, but honestly, the Tri-Slosher, the vanilla one especially, is fine 100% with trading out. They have the quick respawn to come back in a timely manner and jump to their teammates if they want to, and those picks, especially if they can get more than one, are so important. The Rainmaker shield being popped as well. Tiger already back into the fight. There's that exact trade we were talking about, and as it wasn't Izanagi they traded with, no respawn Punisher to look out for, and they're already getting back into the fight.
You know, I made a joke last night on another cast that Tri-Slosher spawns with a guaranteed trade. That's just simply how this weapon ends up going here, and it's so nice to be able to have that when you are playing with the lead. You pick out one of the important members of the enemy team, you maybe identify who has specials on the enemy team, you dive that, you close it out, and even if they trade, you end up in a good position. That has been the recipe for Tiger, who's simply crouching like a tiger and attacking, and yeah, who else would come behind them right there? I didn't even have to look to see who took out those two players, and make it a third, why not?
Crouching Tiger, hidden QR there as they're going to push forward and try and get some ink going and try and find some picks along the way as well. It looks like the Tenatech has the Tri-Strike at the ready as well as the Crab, so the Crab needs to get into high ground position here with 20 seconds left to go. That's another important pick onto Bounce as Mari is on that overhang trying to use their superior range to get away, but Tiger once again shutting them down, looking for the same result against Izanagi, but going to find it against Bounce instead in the form of a trade, and somebody, Panda, will be finally picking up this Rainmaker to actually force an overtime. It's going to be the actual killer wheel coming out early, but that, I think, the pressure being too much. You can see 3 players almost in a straight line from Coral Counterargument to try and come back and shut this one down, and as a result, they're unfortunately not going to get their efficient effectiveness, effectively using their counter pick to take game 2 against Coral Counterargument.
Yeah, in dominant fashion, I will say too. Once they got that initial lead, I thought that they would probably be A-okay, simply, I don't know, playing, continuing, trading out, content there. They had another push that almost went to the same distance. And then at the very end, where they could have simply let nobody touch the Rainmaker and let the game end like that, they grab the Rainmaker again, and then instead of carrying it back to their side that's more defensible, they run it to the opponent again. So if you think that they're feeling good about their performance in that last game, perhaps fueled by the way that their game 1 ended, you certainly saw it right there. They feel that they should be up 2-0 right now, and they played like they feel like they should be up 2-0.
Well, as they say in the song Sweet Child of Mine, where do we go now as we look forward to the next map and mode combination here? We've already seen Tower Control and Rainmaker, Mako Mart, and Scorch Gorge. There's a few maps that teams have favored that have not been played yet that come to mind. I think Sturgeon, Inkbot, and Hagglefish are among those. So we'll see with an even score line and a guaranteed game 5 in this best of 7 what we're going to go for. And for those maps specifically, we see Rainmaker for Scorch Gorge, we see Splat Zones for Hagglefish, we see Tower Control for Hagglefish and Inkbot and Sturgeon. And then for Clam Blitz, we just have Inkbot. However, there are some other maps like Museum that we've seen a ton of for or for Museum rather. And also, you know, for Scorch as well. I mentioned that Rainmaker and for Scorch as well as Clam Blitz seem to be the 2 most common modes played there that are actually favored by these players. I'm wondering if they think the same for potential counterpick opportunities, since these first 2 games have been relatively close, especially the first one.
We will take a moment here. The teams may need a sub here, so Zach and I will do our very best stall here for you so that you all remain somewhat entertained here. And if you are just joining us from any of the many, many wonderful Splatoon events that had happened earlier today, we welcome you into the Fable Finals and into Losers Finals of the Fable Finals. If you are just joining us, we are locked in an intense battle between Efficient Effectiveness and Coral Counterargument. These 2 teams met up earlier on in the bracket in the winners quarterfinals. Efficient Effectiveness got the 2-0 victory over Coral Counterargument, and then CC, as we have called them with our abbreviative minds, have moved through Losers Round 1, Losers Quarterfinals, and Losers Semifinals now getting the revenge game against Efficient Effectiveness. On the other side of Grand Finals, which will be played out tomorrow, is Alluring Airfare, who got the 4-1 victory over Efficient Effectiveness in the winner's final set that was played a little while ago. So a lot of fantastic action has occurred today. These free agents have truly put on, Zach, and that's what this event is about. It's showcasing all of these wonderful free agents who are looking for a team.
Yeah, we come back to just the resources that OTD and MIT have put into displaying the talent that these folks are putting on display here to even make it to this point, to the finals, to where from all sorts of ranks, from even some below the 2000s all the way up to a max of 2861, they have essentially run the gamut of how X rank can treat these players, this power level, as it were, especially with the incorporation of the ELO system and of the overall individual leaderboards, as well as the ability to see the weapons that they're playing on. So for any prospective captains of teams that are either forming a new team, trying to reinvigorate a current roster, just need a +1 as either a sub or a fourth for their team, this is one of the best places to stay tuned to, so you can see players of roles that fit exactly what you're looking for: anchor and backline players, skirmishers, slayers, consistent support players. Super interesting to see all of these weapons on display. Some meta, some I haven't seen in a competitive tournament in I can't remember how long. I'm looking at you, Clash Blaster, but looks like we are going back to tower control, if I heard correctly here. So from game 1 to game 3, not surprising that Counterargument, who's winning TC game 1, opts to go back there in game 3 and 9. As predicted, we're back on Hagglefish Market.
Yep, we love ourselves some Hagglefish Market. I will say I'm a little surprised to see Coral Counterargument come back to tower control. I know that they won tower control, but they won, what, one frame of tower control? They won it in overtime. Again, if you are just joining us, with a comeback that started with me saying it would take a miracle, and I would call it the commentator's blessing. I suppose it's a curse if you're from Efficient Effectiveness, but it was all the way down to just under 29 points here. They had a lot of work to do. They won the fights they needed, got the super jump in at the very end to close it out. So I guess if you feel comfortable on tower control, regardless of how game 1 went, you come back to it as well. Again, we don't expect to see tons of changes from these teams. We've watched each of them in separate sets, and they both tend to remain moderately static, but you know, we are in a point in the game's lifespan where people are, you know, occasionally branching out into different ideas. But listen, the established stalwarts are the established stalwarts, and there's no reason to shake things up, especially when you're locked in losers finals at a chance at FABL finals.
Yeah, and CC can already feel confident in the fact that they've accomplished something that they weren't able to do in the much shorter, albeit winners quarterfinal match against EE, where they were not able to take a game against them. They come into this set, they win game 1 in very dramatic fashion. They force overtime, they hold out, they're able to get things going. And even, you know, even though it wasn't as emphatic of a game in game 2, I think they still had their moments here and can prove that in the right situations, they have what it takes to be able to go through. So tower control Hagglefish, once again, very neutral game. You have those defined opportunities. This is actually a little bit different from where we see a lot of Hagglefish gameplay take place, because with Rainmaker, you know, we see some teams take it all the way to the left-hand side. And for splat zones, your focus is almost entirely on mid, unless you're doing so well that you can push into the enemy spawn. But tower control has those set points. It takes you all the way to the right, just under that overlook. It takes you into the court area of your opponent. It really is going to force you to play in what could be considered uncomfortable situations. So this is really going to be a test, regardless of it being chosen as a counter pick for these teams, just by nature of the mode, for how well they can do given a very neutral game situation and a slower moving objective, forcing more team fights to happen.
Nobody can describe a map and mode like you, Zach. I'll just say it. I'll just say it there. We've watched so many games of tower control Hagglefish Market, and yet I still find myself listening closely whenever you're talking about it, because you're absolutely right. The tower path that it takes here, and one of the reasons why I think tower control is much, much better in for my own personal taste, of course, I'll lead this whole take with that. Why I think it's a lot better than Splatoon 2. One is the tower path, the other is a lack of a certain special that has infinite range and hit scan. But it really is nice that from the tower, you are a natural aggressor. You are in a position while riding the tower to attack the positions that the opponents will defend from. And I think that really creates a natural hard pendulum swing, and that's what we love seeing. I'm so glad that you coined that term earlier today here, because it does describe matches that people like to see. One team breaks a checkpoint, the other comes back and breaks the checkpoint, then the other comes back and gets their opportunity to make a big deep push. Somewhere along the line, a player makes a great individual play and throws a wrench in the algorithm. And that's one of the reasons why we continue to come back not only to tower control, but certainly tower control here on Hagglefish Market.
Well, and shout out to Jem, who's done just such a fantastic job with the analysis throughout this entire tournament and day. And really, the concept that they introduced of aggression versus control really comes into effect with tower control and knowing exactly when to incorporate those pieces into your equation. We talked about it earlier with Izanagi on the stringer, really needing to know when they set up on the tower versus when they sit just behind the tower, allow maybe your support player to go there or somebody that has maybe a crab tank at the ready so that they can continue to do the hybrid job of laying a bit of paint ahead of them, but also applying that backline pressure, the pressure of knowing that you're not going to be able to get and make that pick against that player unless you have a longer range special you have to use on them or go out of your way and away from the objective to take them out. It's very tough to ignore a player like that because of how annoying that weapon can be, honestly, in laying down those 3 darts. And whether it takes you out or not, it puts you in enemy ink. It makes it very difficult to get out of, and it loses your focus away from any potential 1v1 on the tower you're trying to take or just the tower itself. So really, very important concept. I'd love to see for these two teams, once again, on this map specifically, how those two things juxtapose. And this first fight is going to be very telling because of how quickly they're able to farm up those Booyah Bombs and Tri-Strikes especially. Crab Tank behind what would be the zone on this map is also very common to help set the pace. But some teams may opt not to use one if they can avoid it to try and get those picks and then use that tower as a way of staying on, or use that crab as a way of staying on the tower without getting moved off of it until at least they reach that first checkpoint.
Well, if you're just joining us, you may think that the letter of the day is F or A or B or L, but it's actually P. P as in production, because we have some fantastic interviews with the players here. And as we get set for this next game here, we're actually going to play a short interview clip for you here. So to the production staff, take it away.
If I were to play again from the start, I would have picked up Splash sooner because I was really stubborn about it early on. I wanted to play Vanilla Splattershot and, all my other solo queue mains or whatever, so I had to learn quick that I needed to pick up stuff that were, viable and supported the team better.
As far as what I would change about my own experience with FABL, I think I would spend more time focusing on X rank power. So I mostly play open, scrims, tournaments, any way that I can play with my team, so I don't tend to have as much time for X power as I would like. I did play in all 6 FABL qualifiers, but due to my low X rank power, I was in beta bracket for 2 of them. So really the only thing I would change is going back, getting that X rank power higher, getting more chances to compete in alpha bracket instead.
So yeah, definitely spend a lot more time training specifically for this. The main kind of practicing I would do would primarily be solo queue because it really emphasizes the individual nature of playing the game. It's a huge part of FA tournaments. So I personally feel like even just in general, solo queue is heavily underrated in the competitive scene. And it trains you very well to play as a solid individual by improving your mechanics, awareness, game sense, movement, and even predicting how your opponents are going to play, because you learn all the different weapon matchups in solo queue that the game throws at you.
Maybe both for banned or unbanned maps and modes when teams are released could be a good idea.
And welcome back, folks, to the FABL Finals. was a lovely set of interviews there from the players. What would you do differently if you could redo Fable from the start? And, you know, I've loved seeing, Zach, all of the interviews that we've gotten to have with players recently, with different organizations really trying to piece that aspect of it in. We've been hearing people say we need more of it for, you and I hear that for years now, but it's good to finally see pencil being put to paper and some wonderful thoughts there from our players.
Yeah, feedback is always a core tenet of every tournament. I know one of the things that I see from players right after a tournament ends is in the Discord channel, if there's not a feedback channel, can we open one now, please, so that I can get my thoughts off my chest? And whether it's for a tournament or whether it's internal reflection or team-based reflection on your play, I think the initial reactions are important to look at, if only objectively. You know, you don't want to be taking the raw emotion and running with that as like your guiding principle after a tournament. There's more intense analysis that can be done without emotion, but I really think, you know, how you feel after a tournament says a lot about where you are with your team, where your team is in relation. So I love the fact that they're getting that feedback early and often, and of course the video format only adds to that aspect.
And we now have our players back, folks. We were just as worried as you were. Trust us, they're trying to make sure that we had the rosters, but it will be back. It will be the same rosters. There will be no asterisks on this set, at least for the time being. Cross your fingers and knock on wood. Tower Control Hagglefish Market. Zach told you everything you could possibly want to know about this map and mode just before that wonderful little interview break. So we'll just wait for the teams to get set. Again, efficient effectiveness, 1 win, Coral Counterargument. This is their counter pick, their Coral counter pick, if you will. And they have chosen to bring it back here. Taking a look, Tiger, of course. Why would you ever switch off that Tri-Slosher? It has been feasting. But here we go, Zach. Now a major shakeup from Coral Counterargument. Mari, who had been playing that Wiper, is going over to the Hydra. And Izanagi, who had been playing exclusively that Tri-Stringer, now takes up the sword.
I have to admit, you know, the Hydra Splatling, when Splatoon 3 was announced, we were starting to get some of the weapon loadouts and kits in. It really intrigued me. I think the Booyah Bomb aspect of it especially was like, wow, you have a weapon with such crazy range that can pump out an insane amount of DPS, has a Booyah Bomb too that could be crazy, and it really hasn't found its place in the meta. You know, the ballpoint has been really popular. I think the heavy has been kind of a sleeper pick, especially on a map like this one. So to see it out now as a second Booyah Bomb along with your sloshing machine really gives you an extra added component on a map where it really behooves you to be able to throw maybe one Booyah left, one Booyah right, and really funnel the remaining players into mid or back to their spawn.
Well, to say nothing for the fact that you now have 3, count them, 3 GG specials, if you will. So should things get going for the worse here, you have a real opportunity to stall things out and move your people where you need to close things out. So right now, it appears that they are in not a great situation. Izanagi did a nice job there of at least taking one player out and getting in a position to force people to look the other way so that the rest of the team can come out of spawn and will actually earn more than just a good job and a pat on the back. That is a big player taken down there, and we can officially call this a successful defense. If Bounce is able to get 0 and does, that may be even more. Panda has to back way up, probably trying to preserve a crab tank here, which would be a valuable defensive resource, and Coral Counterargument with all the answers thus far.
Yeah, Bounce supported by Izanagi here, who's going to pop the hammer and use it, trying to get a couple picks. I think effective efficiency backed into a corner, but they're not able to find them. One jumps out, the other dodges around and gets the pick. There's a second one onto Bounce, looking for the third, but Mari is going to use the mask of the Booyah Bomb as a shield. And unfortunately, that could have turned out even better for a team that doesn't even make it to the halfway point. And I wanted to point out, too, for Izanagi on that Wiper, such a far cry in terms of play style from what they've normally been doing. But you can see shades of that backline and anchor nature. They're actually protecting Mari on that Hydra Splatling, making sure that they can't get through and using this left alleyway as their home, similar to how Bounce is using the opposite one with that sloshing machine. So love the fact that they're making use of the entirety of the map. Unfortunately, a full wipeout as efficient effectiveness, using all of their resources, including the crab, to start this one, and the other half of their resources still available to them, including the inkjet from Tiger.
Yep, this is going from bad to worse in a hurry. We said in that last set, just one small mistake. The mistake that time might have been the way that they jumped in so quickly. You see there that Bounce took a dive at the tower there, and they'll make use of one of their GG specials to try to keep this going, at least from a defensive side. They really need to close out this Tetris here, or things could get really bad in a hurry. Qlar ducking and dodging, but you can't get away from a machine, and oh dear, somebody's holding still for 3, 4, 5 seconds. Well, okay. We can't do anything but laugh, Zach.
Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's the flying Tentatek. I really didn't expect to see that, but again, here we are. No disconnects as of yet, and the score remains relatively close at 54-52. Coral Counterargument with a good chunk of that map control in mid, and they get an important early pick onto Tiger, who, albeit being back soon, will allow them to push the tower at least out of the central area. We see Bounce going down there while that Booyah Bomb was in tow. They have a couple more specials at the ready. Panda having to use the rolling aspect of the crab there to just go away, not able to use the longer shot of it. However, EE able to take it back. Tiger yet again going down. Bounce at the same time. Those sloshers just can't stay up for more than 20 or 25 seconds. And for now, Efficient Effectiveness trying to figure out who's going to get atop the tower here. They lose 2 members, and their last one is on the tower. Yet again, Panda with the crab. It may be a suboptimal opportunity, whether they meant to use it then or not. And that will give Coral Counterargument a great opening of their own in the final 30 seconds here to maybe extend their lead.
Yep, and of course, Bounce and Tiger will trade out, but notably, Mari went down there. We didn't really see what it was, but that's a big, big deal because that Hydra is going to take a while to get back to that GG special. With Alexis down now, really all that Mari's going to be able to do is try to dissuade people from getting on the tower. All that while, though, as Bounce tries to move forward, Tiger happy to pounce on top of that. Just 10 seconds here. Tiger still moving forward. Mari desperately trying to paint here. You can see, not even opting to fight anything. This Booyah Bomb is probably not going to get charged in time. It is not. And Just Desserts come back, Zach, after losing a game early on in overtime on tower control. Efficient Effectiveness takes one right back in the same fashion.
Man, maybe the toughest component of the Hydra Splatling is similar to the Dynamo Roller class in the Roller family, where it just takes a longer time to get everything going. And if you're being pressured and you don't have enough of a charge set up the way you want it to, you have to just kind of use a little parting shot, just tap the ground and use that to get away. And they had their special at the ready. They knew that they couldn't sit there charging a shot in order for it to effectively hold out and reach that tower. So they had to move and try and use that Booyah Bomb. It's just a little bit too late. And after yet another close game, albeit with a little bit of funny business there in the middle, Efficient Effectiveness has won 2 in a row and now has the lead in this set. So with 2 tower control games done, we go back to Coral Counterargument for a counter pick. And will they go with either of the 2 modes that we haven't seen thus far, or will they stick it out here with what we have seen? Super interested to see. We've already seen some compositional changes, maybe more than we had seen for the most part in our previous sets, but some things remain consistent, including things like Tiger and Bounce constantly trading out with each other. That's such a fun storyline to follow here.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting when you see a counter pick come through and the composition changes that you noted. I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into that, because if you have such a big swap, especially a big swap compared to what we've seen for the entirety of the tournament. I know we didn't get to spectate every Coral Counterargument game here, but that's a big change. That is not simply a, well, we feel like we play well on this map. That's something that they had cooked up specifically for that map and mode. So when that type of switch falls flat, I think it's difficult because you've lost the element of surprise. What are you going to go back to? Because we've seen you play tower control with not that comp before. Was that specifically a Hagglefish tower control counter pick? Or are you comfortable going to an Inkblot Art Academy with that sort of play there? And it sounds like it's going to be Hagglefish zone, so we won't be moving very far. We're just going to swap out the tower and put a nice little hologram in the center of the map here for our splat zone. But if you were going to stick with Mari on the Splatling, I mean, listen, there have been many Splatlings who have made their careers painting this zone and keeping it for their team. I'll be curious to see if that's the choice.
Yeah, this is not difficult to explain because we already kind of touched on Zone's Hagglefish when explaining TC Hagglefish, where just as you mentioned, Splatlings love to stick right behind the zone, whether on the, up on top of the little bit of higher ground where the zone actually is, or around where the boxes are, that there's a half box and a full box that you can sort of shield your body with to sort of charge up and be able to spin out the entirety of that Splatling. I don't see Heavy listed as one of the weapons in Mari's wheelhouse, but that certainly, as we've mentioned, is a weapon that really excels on this map and mode. You're able to throw down the Wave Breaker in a position that's not going to be easily caught out by your opponents, and the Sprinkler, always good. There's a high ground. There's like boxes that are raised up for the walls on the left and right hand side where the zone is that would be perfect to continuously paint the zone if you wanted to go for that. But if we end up seeing either of the Splatlings that are listed for that player, whether that's the Hydra Splatling or the Nautilus 47, maybe you go with the Nautilus. Maybe you have that Ink Storm and you provide a Sea Jet-esque effect just with a different weapon. You're even gaining some of the benefits of the Wave Breaker without the Wave Breaker in terms of having that point sensor as your sub weapon. The only thing you're trading is you are really going to have to be perfect with your positioning, because you are not going to have a lot of ink without your teammates to move around in.
Let's take a look here, folks. Again, a best of 7, so not a must win, but certainly would feel a lot better if you are Coral Counterargument. The Tetra is going to come back out, and Mari now swapping over to the Explosher, so we are all the way in the bag for this one, Zach. Mari bringing it right out, and Izanagi going to be staying with that Wiper.
You know what? My points still stand because that's the exact same sub and special here. We have the point sensor and the Ink Storm, so just take everything I said, forget what I said about the main weapon itself, and you've got what Mari's playing here. Mari playing, instead of down on the bottom there, atop that uninkable tarp there, that tent, you saw that they were out of ink, so they had to back off onto that wall and recharge there, and as part of that, that's going to allow efficient effectiveness to take the zone first. Tiger not on the Tri-Slosher anymore. They've actually gone over to the machine, and they get a double as a result, almost coming away with the actual Booyah Bomb itself, but Bounce, as they've been for Tiger, they're equal this entire time, ends up getting the trade as we continue ticking down the zone here for EE.
Yeah, Bounce actually gets a really, really nice hit there, because that means that Tiger is going to be caught out. And Bounce basically got 3 different players right there. That was looking very, very dangerous. As strong as the Explosher is at getting some paint on the zone, it can be bullied out of those positions more easily than some of the other weapons would. Now Izanagi going to take a very interesting fight with the Crab Tank. Not a lot of weapons that would like to take that fight. And now it's only Bounce who's firing back at the zone and can't get the jump out. So things went from bad to worse there. That looked like they had a real opportunity to get something going, but one person goes down, and efficient effectiveness just doesn't give you many opportunities once they start attacking. Now the Tetra loops get set up, and things are getting bad.
Yeah, QR known for attacking there. They only know how to hold W with both of their weapons, the Dark Tetras and the Octobrush. Bounce looks like has been one of the major holdouts here in terms of getting things going. Now they're going to throw the Booyah Bomb just behind the point, and they're not quite able to get anyone, but they're holding down the zone itself and locking down the penalty. So they're not going to have too much more to contend with here as they continue taking it down. They also had the Tri-Strike at the ready. Izanagi trying to get Tiger, who's sharking around on the side. It will be another trade there. However, they get the job done and hold on to the zone for now. QR popping the Reef Slider as well as the hammer coming out. They've done everything they could, and even though they get to 56, it's still not enough as EE comes back to claim the zone.
And I mean, you see exactly the difference between these two teams right there. They send their sword after Bounce, and on the other side, 2 people have to go after Tiger. Tiger forces the trade, and on the other end, Bounce goes down to the sword. It's just these subtle things, these some fights that make or break pushes here. Now all of a sudden more points are coming off. Tiger is already up there to attack. I'm not even sure where Izanagi is going to be able to go with this, and it's going to go down as well. Dancing around here, Bounce having a real tough time, will win this fight, but has a long way to go to get to the zone. Just tosses it and not even able to toss it far enough. And even if they were 2 members there ready to clean up whatever else was there, as efficient effectiveness now only 1 game away from taking the other slot here in FABL Finals and earning their rematch against Alluring Airfare.
Yeah, arguably the furthest apart these two teams have been as far as we've seen them in this losers finals here. Panda, of course, that consistent presence, and Qlar, even if they're not always able to get the picks, they're forcing the members of Coral Counterargument to mind them, to stay in their spawn, look out for their teammate who's getting attacked, most likely bounce onto that sloshing machine, and we continue on with Qlar being a major distraction and keeping them from setting up effectively. So, again, efficient effectiveness, no pun intended, doing exactly what is needed. You mentioned that Booyah Bomb there at the end. They're so far pressed back into their spawn that they're not able to make anything of it. We saw Mari there on the Explosher. They definitely weren't able to set up in an ideal position with folks like Qlar constantly in their spawn court area, and Tiger, not enough can be said about Tiger, showing that they can play both buckets listed there on their roster to the highest degree, moving from the Tri-Slosher over to the Sloshing Machine, making use of the offensive capabilities of the weapons and layering that in as a Booyah Bomb user to help have an effect on the zone itself, or even just place it ahead of the zone to dissuade Coral Counterargument from getting close.
And I think if you are Coral Counterargument, this is the frustrating piece here. You've been beaten on your mode and you've been beaten on your map. So where do you go? Well, you go to the place where every set goes. We're back on Tower Control, Inkblot Art Academy. And Zach, we speculated that Coral Counterargument would probably come back to Tower Control if given the opportunity. And no surprise here. Every set has to have this one eventually.
Yeah, it is a staple among majors, among Splatoon tournaments in general. It is something that constantly gets referred back to, and that's for a reason. It is exciting to watch. It is fast-paced. There's not a lot of room for error, and it just feels like a more condensed area. Mid-control, for that reason, is so important. You have to be able to get your team in a position to where you can make that initial push of the tower up and through the first checkpoint, and then as it goes up the ramp into your opponent's plat area, you really have to be careful again with your positioning. You have to have somebody typically going to that top left area via the ink rail or hopping from the tower maybe to take out some of the members that are going to be going that way from the spawn area of the team defending. Lots and lots to keep in mind on what's such a relatively small map. These ones often go the distance in terms of heading into overtime. So with how close these games have been, maybe with the exception of Game 4, look to see Coral Counterargument, a team with their back up against the wall, fight as hard as they can and have that effect be prevalent at the onset of this game, because they're going to want to start strong and try and finish this one in a knockout.
Well, the big question, I think, at this point, what weapon is Mari going to play? What weapon is Izanagi going to play for Coral Counterargument? You've tried a couple different looks now, and maybe they feel as though Izanagi's sword is just going to be a little bit more effective than Mari's, and Mari will simply fill in where necessary. But that has been the question as this set has gone on. They're going to need to find that answer here very shortly. Folks, this could be it. Effective efficiency versus Coral Counterargument. And let's take a look here. Qlar going to be bringing out the brush as noted, and it's still going to be the Exlosher. Efficient effectiveness, Coral Counterargument, potentially the final game here in the FABL Finals.
Yeah, a bit of a surprise. I think it would have been interesting to see Mari on a Splatling, because you can use the pole in the middle of the tower. You can use the boxes over your plat to kind of hide yourself. And sure, the Explosher, being in the Slosher family, can sort of hit over those walls, but the walls on this map are relatively low, and Tiger rushing in immediately to take them out. Bounce balls as well. That's already a 2-down situation. Izanagi not even really able to leave spawn at this point. We also have the Wiper player from EE using their Ultra Stamp, and they just have Panda doing what they always do so well, sitting back, farming that crab, and getting ready for any counterattacks. And in the blink of an eye, we're already almost at the halfway mark here for EE.
I mean, everything that could have gone poorly for the start did go poorly here. Whenever Tiger is standing on your uninkable surface that is closest to your spawn, things haven't gone so well. If there was one reprieve for them here, and you always try to make the best of a bad situation, they painted up so much that Panda actually couldn't even build the crab tank while standing on the tower there. Painting all around, there was simply not any real estate to make it done, so what could have been the exclamation point on a dominating opening push taken away from them here. So they're going to at least get the opportunity to fight their way back to mid. One player already done. They've spotted out a couple on that side, not able to close the deal. Now Tiger is starting to run in, does get taken out. Mari struggling to find a way to contribute to this.
That was great in mid there. You saw just the spinning lonely hammers, one from each side of their respective Wiper players who had fallen in mid, but it works out in efficient effectiveness's favor. You mentioned real estate. I don't think Coral Counterargument currently has enough capital in order to pay for the real estate there in mid because they are constantly backed up into their spawn area. Once again, the twirling lonely hammer cuts short the movement there of the Wiper player from EE. Alexis pushing forward, trying to get QLR off that Octobrush. They stay alive and get the pick needed. And yet again, they put up a relatively strong defense here. They stop them from getting to the 50 mark. And that could be enough in the early game, but they're going to have to find their offensive footing at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we always say, listen, you hold on to that checkpoint and anything is possible if enough time gets through. Right now, as we enter the last half of this game, it has been all EE, but, you know, we saw earlier a bigger push come out of Coral Counterargument here. Izanagi's moving through, desperately needs to clear out. Tiger is not able to, had them dead to rights in that scenario. Instead, Tiger's going to make them pay in a major way. Gets to, how's about a third? Not able to close it out as Bounce rotates back, but Bounce does go down, and again, just not clean enough. Alexis is going to have to relinquish the tower on this side and still gets taken out. Izanagi can't come in quickly enough to close that one out as another one goes down. And now they once again have to turn all resources to the defensive side.
And taking a look at QLR here on the Zipcaster, trying to catch Bounce here. They just barely have the range, and whether it was Alexis or Bounce who got the trade there, QLR will fall as a result. Tiger basically sitting up and waiting for any members of CC foolish enough to try and go down. Their T-Tech will fall. Izanagi trying to wait for the right opportunity to jump down off the high ground, but they'll get spotted out by the Wiper player. Panda using the ball form of this crab to make sure that they can actually get through the checkpoint, and they will successfully at least get through the halfway mark, and there it is, past checkpoint 2. They will not have to worry about it. The Ink Storm coming out maybe a little bit too late, and now it's QLR back on that Zipcaster. They find one on Tamari, looking for another one there, but they effectively face a 1v2 at the onset, and Bounce helping to shut things down. But as we approach the final minute here, Coral Counterargument losing a couple too many members even on the defense here. 2 down on the side of efficient effectiveness, but they'll be back just as soon as they got turned away. And I'm really struggling to find some successful moments here from Coral Counterargument that they could build on, but maybe with this Booyah Bomb, that's the chance that they needed.
Yep, they took a couple out here, and they need to move up right now. You see that Alexa stopped a little bit short there, right on the doorstep, and opted not to go up any higher, whether dissuaded or whether a conscious decision we didn't really get to see. But that's been the big difference here between these two teams. As soon as efficient effectiveness has an opportunity to move forward, they send 2 people forward and immediately try to take the opponent's plat on the other side. That opportunity has just not presented itself in the same fashion. Now you see the 2 frontliners having to look the other way to take care of QLR, and because of that, we're gonna see O crash in with a hammer that's finally able to make it work, and with just 10 seconds left, a wipeout, Zach, a wipeout. They will desperately throw themselves at the tower, but it'll all be for naught as efficient effectiveness gets the 4-1 victory and will earn their rematch in the grand finals against Alluring Airfare here in the FABL finals.
Yeah, major congrats to Efficient Effectiveness, who only seemed to widen the gap between these two teams as the set went on. First losing in a heartbreaking game 1, and then getting a pretty close game 2, and it just kept getting a larger and larger margin away as those errors started to pile up for Coral Counterargument, who just could not find the right picks in order to save themselves on tower control Inkblot. They get multiple opportunities, of course, to counter pick. You see they really favored tower control. 3 out of the 5 maps that we go to were for the tower control mode. Of course, they get the win, but is that really enough to constitute continuously picking it when you lose it out on game 3? Maybe instead you try your chances on something like Clam Blitz, but really it speaks to just how well Efficient Effectiveness played as a team. I think some of the standout players for their roster, Tiger has to be mentioned. They really started this set with a bang. Those first 2 games on the Tri-Slosher, and then moving over to the sloshing machine, doing such a great job of matching Bounce in that endeavor. I mean, Qlar on a couple of weapons that are not seen super often, especially on the Octobrush, they maybe belie the fact that they're only 2027 X power currently. They played quite well, especially using that Zipcaster effectively in multiple team fights. And then Zero Waffle Starro there on that Splatana Wiper, really going up and matching their opponent on Coral Counterargument, the multiple opponents on the Wiper that they had, in fact, and showing that even though it wasn't listed as one of the weapons that they have in their wheelhouse, showing that they can play it at a high level. So just all around, major congratulations to Efficient Effectiveness, who, as you mentioned, tomorrow will get the opportunity to face Alluring Airfare in a rematch of our winners finals.
And not only is it a rematch, it's going to be a rematch in the new Showdown rule set. Folks, it's going to be a best of 9, a map pool consisting of 15 map mode combinations. It's going to be tomorrow, so we'll walk you through the rest of the format tomorrow. It's going to be an exciting matchup between two teams who absolutely deserve to be here. They fought hard through their portion on the top half of the bracket. They met up in winners finals, and it's only fair that they will be the ones that meet up here in the grand finals as well. Folks, we want to thank you so much for joining us here today, and we're going to bring Jem in here, not for maybe the full analyst desk portion here, but Jem, I know you were watching. I know you have some thoughts. What a great set between two fun teams.
Man, Coral Counterargument just couldn't quite commence to coordinate their counter-argument. I'm sorry. Efficient Effectiveness has been really impressive so far with their ability to put together coordinated, aggressive plays. They've been able to really punch through a lot of the defenses that the teams that they've been fighting so far have been able to put up. And it really took like a very high X power player and a very specific set of weapons and comps to be able to hold them back in Alluring Airfare. And so that's going to be an exciting match to see in the FABL finals tomorrow. Even then, we're being alliterative. And we're going to be able to see, because now with Efficient Effectiveness able to take the day and go back and watch over the footage, and maybe, figure out where it was, maybe they were slipping up, maybe figure out where some holes are in their game. Well, it'll be interesting to see if they come out with some new comps, some new kind of set play ideas to specifically counter the only team that they will have to play tomorrow.
And you brought up a really interesting point there. I was going to ask you a follow-up question, but I think you may have already answered it. The pieces of what Alluring Airfare were able to do in order to hold that back. Like you noted, the highest XP player that we had in this event, Yaru, who was playing for Alluring Airfare, and then a very interesting composition, really the only true Charger player that we had seen as well, really did throw them off. So I guess I'll just ask you quickly here, and maybe the players, if they're watching, will steal some of this, but what do you think Efficient Effectiveness needs to do differently between now and the next set?
It's going to be tricky because they have to find a way to not get sharked by the roller, I think is actually a really big deal for them. Plague came up with some really clutch plays there, and given how fast they're moving in, painting defensively is going to be a little bit challenging. I think that there is maybe a little bit less pushing power coming out from Alluring Airfare, and so maybe just the pace of play can overwhelm them if they can keep getting the jumps in. But they're going to have to figure out how to neutralize, one of these major threats. They need to get the Charger down, they need to get the roller out of the way, they need to figure out how to get Yaru out of the picture so that they, have some kind of advantage there, and then maybe they can start pushing the pace of play, and then maybe they can start trying to go and stagger the enemy team. But with too many just little sharking threats, too many things that will catch you up if you try to go in too quickly, it might be a little bit challenging to play quite as aggressively as they've been able to play against all of the other teams. So it'll be a question of how they can crack that defense, and then how they can keep it cracked open by continuing to bombard it by just throwing themselves at it. I think they will also need to work a little bit on making sure they stay coordinated on their pushes. There was a moment, for example, in Game 1 against Alluring Airfare where the Rainmaker went one way and all of the frontliners were diving in the other direction, so the Rainmaker was vulnerable. You know, little things like that. They need to make sure they're coordinating very, very quickly to make sure that the objective stays safe. Sometimes they'll dive even a little bit too deep. That was something that happened on Inkblot just there. The enemy team was able to collapse around the people who are up in their spawn because that's not where the tower was. So a few little things like that, little adjustments, we could see, you know, some upsets here, a little bit of a different outcome. But that remains to be seen for tomorrow. I want to say a huge thank you to you gentlemen here. You are some of the best on the mic, and it's been a pleasure working with you here. And we're going to be back with everybody here, I believe, on the Sunday finals tomorrow. It'll start at exactly the same time that these did. That was 4 p.m. Eastern. And we will be back for the best of 9 finale of this entire Fable thing with Alluring Airfare and Efficient Effectiveness closing out the league.
And you all have no idea how happy I am to not have to say those two names for approximately 20 hours, maybe. It is very difficult to say Alluring Airfare and Efficient Effectiveness over and over and over again. I'm about 99% sure at one point I said effective efficiency. And thank you, Zach, for not immediately blowing me up for making that grievous mistake. But you said it so well there, Jem. You've got Chargers and Rollers and Yarus, oh my, everything to worry about, and all of it seems to go against what you like to do in your brand of Splatoon. Zach, I'll pass it to you here for your own final thoughts about today's action and what we can expect tomorrow.
You know, just giving the two teams that have reached the grand finals credit here, Alluring Airfare, I almost said Alluring Alliteration, which would have been great. But they come in with the highest combined elo. I'm sure from that some pressure on them, but the 1-2 punch of Yaru and Plague really shines through. I think Yaru was able to get some picks that were so nice as an entry point, and Plague, I really loved the areas that they would use their weapon. I think they were so smart, like the walls on Inkblot Art Academy and the times at which they used their Kraken Royale. It certainly got a lot of picks and a lot of effectiveness for them, if for nothing else sometimes than as a distraction. And I think they also have a very interesting backliner in Centratide. I loved seeing the Z plus F splatter scope. We saw multiple explosives. I think since Centratide has it as well, and then we just saw it in this last set. Super fun to get to see that weapon again in a major tournament. And then for efficient effectiveness, right? You know, elo-wise, actually rated 6th out of 8 teams in terms of their combined score there. But boy, did they come out to play. QLR doing a great means of distraction with both the Dark Tetras and the Octobrush. I thought the Zipcasters, once again, did really well. Panda, I can't say enough how much respect I have for backline and anchor players that have been able to adapt to flexing to a vanilla splash and use it to, whether use Crab or use the main weapon itself, just get to that extreme range, back up their players, or even just provide that supportive extra special. And then I think Tiger as well was one of the stars of the show tonight. Tri-Slosher, Sloshing Machine, they really put on that offensive, aggressive style and opened up a lot of early opportunities for their team that led to games going a certain way that maybe it would have been much more of a stalemate or slog to get through, especially in those close early games against Coral Counterargument. So really, these two teams doing a phenomenal job. I can't wait to see how they match up tomorrow in a longer series. And hopefully, Efficient Effectiveness can take what they learned in Winners Finals and implement it against a team that's looking very strong right now.
Well, as these two fine gentlemen have noted here, we will be back tomorrow. Same time, same place to determine a winner from this gauntlet of an event that has come together. And remember, for those of you who are watching, these are free agents who are looking for their forever home, to borrow a term that is used by many adoptive agencies here. It's not quite that serious, but seriously, we have some great players who are showing their stuff and would love to compete at the highest level. So until tomorrow, we will see you next time, and stay fresh, everyone.